All right. First up on the list here, we've got Ansrag's Rampage, which is a sorcery for 3 double pip red. It's rare. Destroy all artifacts you don't control, then exile the top X cards of your library, where X is the number of libraries that were, or X is the number of artifacts that were put into graveyards from the battlefield this turn. You may put a creature card exiled this way onto the battlefield. It gains haste. Return it to your hand at the beginning of the next instep. Okay, well, there's a fair amount of clue tokens that I think are going to be relatively important, and you can also sacrifice You can sacrifice artifacts before playing this card, so you might be able to get this to be a reasonable dig, and then get to play a creature, and then it gains haste, and then return it. So it also returns it to its hand. This is kind of a hard one to judge. This was kind of a hard one to judge in a vacuum because, like, if everything was just artifacts, right, then this is kind of a wrath, and a wrath that also digs you to additional stuff. So I'm not sure what red is doing yet, if it's kind of about artifact hate or like creating a bunch of. I bet it's more about suspect and removal than it is about like token creation. So I feel like this is going to be kind of a hard one. I'm going to give this one a C, and just I'm not sure it's going to take playing the set, I think, to really figure out the value of this one. So Bulrak Clan Basher is a 3/2 double strike trampler for 4 double pip red. I say double pip trampler, double strike trampler, and it has disguise for 3 double pip red. Okay. Well, so you flip up for 5, you deal 6 damage. Kind of like flipping up. We've seen, like the bubble smuggler pops up and is a 6/5 or whatever. And so that does some good stuff. But having Embercleave just as a passive ability, like the keywords double strike and trample, can definitely be good. It's an expensive disguise cost though, and we haven't seen anything that makes the disguise cost less. So I'm gonna go with C on this one as well. I think that, and especially if there's a card that like makes the disguise stuff cost 1 less or something, then it starts getting really appealing. Because like a double strike trample 3/2, like I think I would be wanting to pay more along the lines of like 4 for this, and so 8 over 2 turns is a lot. So yeah, I'm gonna go with C. Case of the Burning Masks. We've got 1 double pip red for an uncommon case enchantment. When this case enters the battlefield, it deals 3 damage to target creature an opponent controls, and then to solve 3 or more sources you controlled dealt damage this turn. Notably, you can do this with creatures as well. It's not just non-creature spells. So you need to deal this, and this counts as one of them the turn that you play it. So you need to get in with 2 creatures, and they don't have to deal combat damage to a player. It just has to be combat, just deal damage, period. So as long as you have 2 creatures to attack with, this is looking pretty interesting. And then when it's solved, you can sacrifice this case, exile the top 3 cards of your library, choose one of them, and you may play that card this turn. Oh, well, you're not really going to want to solve it the turn that you play it then. That's the catch. So it's removal, a little bit expensive. Usually deal 3 damage to a creature is a 1 and a red. And, but then should be pretty easy to flip this the following turn and get some additional dig, which is okay in red. Removal that turns into card advantage later. I'm going to go with a B on this one. I think the cases have been pretty appealing. This one is double pip red, though. So I think the other cases we've seen have all been single pip. But double red does seem kind of expensive. Yeah, I'll give it a C because of the double red. But I do think there's going to be a deck that wants this. Hey, what's up, Herbivore? Hope you're having a good day. Case of the Crimson Pulse. So we've got a 2 and a red for an enchantment case. This one's at rare. When this case enters the battlefield, discard a card, then draw 2 cards. So we got a rummage +1. And then to solve, you have no cards in hand. Not usually a problem for red. And then solved at the beginning of your upkeep, discard your hand, then draw 2 cards. Ooh, baby. Let's go. I like this. So double rummage is great, and then once you're hellbent, you just you get to draw 2 cards a turn. Oh man, this for the really like cheap, let's just get in really quick decks. I like this a lot. So I'm gonna give this one a B. Um, the set is kind of looking like it will be a go large instead of a go small kind of game. So getting in through your opponent's stuff might be difficult, but if there's a color that's going to do it, it's going to be red. So Herbivore saying the ideal play pattern is 1-drop, 2-drop, play and solve on turn 3. Yeah, and then you can sacrifice it the following turn because once it's solved, it remains just solved on the battlefield, so you don't have to pop it the time like as soon as you solve it. So like you could pop, solve it on the turn that you play it, and then the following turn sacrifice it, exile for additional. So removal plus dig is pretty good, but double pip red, right? This one I think is a little bit more flexible, and but I do think there's going to be fewer archetypes because of the investigate that's going to give you a bunch of clue tokens to draw. I'm not sure there's going to be a whole lot of archetypes that are looking to get hellbent to trigger drawing 2 cards a turn. So without playing the set, this one's kind of a question mark, but I believe that there's going to be a red archetype that is just going to try to flood the board and get down quickly. So, and we've got Caught Red-Handed, which is 4 and a red for a uncommon instant. This spell can't be countered, which includes the ward ability on the disguised creatures. Gain control of target creature until end of turn, untap that creature, it gains haste until end of turn, and then suspect it. Interesting. So this is kind of the threaten of the set. We haven't seen a whole lot of sacrifice cards. We've seen a couple, but not like a whole bunch. For the steal and sack kind of strategy, right? But we're seeing this at uncommon, and this tends to be ape strategy at least somewhere. And then suspect being able to get that creature, give it haste, and give it menace is cool. And then the suspect counter does not remove. It's not suspected until end of turn. So I believe that when your opponent gets it, it's going to be a menace creature that can't block after, if they live. Ideally, they don't live after you play this sort of card, though. And then rulings as far as like if you steal one of their disguised creatures, I think you can look at it. I think you get to know what it is once you control it. And then, but you might not be able to undisguise it because you'd have to pay the mana that's associated with that card. And suspect is a keyword action. So like you put a suspect on a target so it can fizzle. Like if the creature dies or whatever, then the suspect counter just kind of fizzles. But I believe it is a counter, and you can remove the suspected counters. Which then gets rid of the suspect keyword, I believe. I'll be reviewing the mechanics a little bit more in depth for my guide later this evening. So I'll be covering the suspect and exactly what it is. But to my knowledge, it is something that is permanent, and it's not like... how does the ring bearer and the suspect change in your mind? The ring bearer, there could only be one? There can be multiple suspects in this one. Hey, what's up, D. Lawson? Happy Friday. Yeah, so as far as this goes, this is expensive for this sort of effect. And the ring bearer is an example of something that's not a counter. Okay, well, I don't know specifically if the suspect is a counter. I have to admit. I think it is, but I'm not 100% certain on that. But I know that like you can have multiple suspects. They all do the same thing, which is it has menace and can't block. If you put an additional suspect counter onto something that's already a suspect, it doesn't change anything. I do believe that you can remove the suspect counter and then it loses suspect. So I think it's a counter, but that's something to look into. And as far as this spell goes, though, without seeing any clear like steal sack strategies, I'm going to start this one off with a C. Sometimes there's a really like an archetype where it just really shines as a B, and then like if the steal and sack thing's not working very well, this could be a D. But I think C is a good place to start it out of. I'll give it a shot, right? especially if it is a kind of like go big. If it's a go big format, then this can win you the game. But yeah, it's definitely overcosted, right? Usually this is something we've seen at common, not often, but sometimes. And yeah, is usually more along the 3 mana for sure. But I think this set is looking like it's going to be very mana intensive with the disguise mechanic and the investigate clue tokens. So it's possible that the game will go a little bit longer. But being able to steal something and give it menace is pretty damn good, because not only are you removing a blocker, which in and of itself is already good, but then they require 2 blockers to steal whatever you're stealing. So I get why this is a little bit more expensive. This is kind of is it's sort of like you're taking away 2 blockers. So five mana implies that they're trying to balance it. So I guess the question is whether or not they overcorrected. Yeah, or just like it was too powerful when they play tested it at 3, and so they tried like 5 seemed about right. Yeah, I think it's going to be something to at least explore. The Chase is On is a common instant for 2 and a red, and target creature gets +3/+0 and gains first strike until end of turn. Investigate. So target creature gets. So this is another one that's it's expensive, right? So 2 and a red for +3/+0 and first strike, but it comes with an investigate. +3/+0 and first strike is usually something that we see with a like 1 and a red. And so similarly to like the +2/+2 that creates an investigate, all of the colors have this kind of trick that triggers an investigate as well. Or I guess blues wasn't a trick, but they're one more expensive than they should be. And so the question is whether or not creating a clue token is worth 1 mana. And it might be, but I think you got to be really needing those clue tokens or really wanting to do the clue token thing. And there are definitely going to be some archetypes where, like, we've already seen cards that benefit off of sacrificing an artifact or, drawing a second card. So if you're in that archetype, then I think this goes up. But I'm going to start this one off with a C. I don't think it's unplayable because of the clue token synergies, but yeah, I do think it's a secret gold card. I think it's going to go into specific color archetypes and not others. Concealed Weapon is an artifact for 1 and a red. Artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +3/+0 and then has disguise. So it's a weapon that is in disguise as a creature, and then it turns into a weapon. It's kind of interesting. When Concealed Weapon is turned face up, attach it to target creature you control, and its equip cost is 1 and a red. So you don't really want to be casting the equip cost. That is expensive, and notably has colored mana in the equipment cost. So you can't just equip it for colorless. But being able to disguise it onto something that then hits for 3 damage for 3 is like okay. And +3/+0, that's not nothing. I'm gonna give this one a C, just because of the disguise creature synergies. If this didn't have disguise, then I wouldn't want it, but I think I could see it. Disguise is a special, yeah, keyword act. It's a keyword action that's like morph. You could do it at instant speed. Correct. Connecting the Dots is a 1 and a red enchantment. Whenever a creature you control attacks, exile the top card of your library face down. 1 and a red, discard your hand, sacrifice Connecting the Dots. Put all cards exiled with Connecting the Dots into their owner's hands. Okay. So whenever a creature you control attacks, you dig, and then you later get additional value. The problem with this is that it's I want to be doing something a little bit better than this on turn 2 in aggressive archetypes, because you have to take the turn off, and then every time that a creature is attacking, it's kind of like you get like a Bomat situation, and then those cards go into your hand. I mean, it's kind of interesting, but I'm gonna give this one a C. I don't think that this is something that I'm like super excited about. The just because the enchantment doesn't really do much the turn that you play it. What's up, Lala? Yeah, far less Bs this time around. Not everything getting just Bs across the board. Convenient Target, enchantment aura for 1 red. It's an enchant creature. When convenient target enters the battlefield, suspect enchanted creature. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1, and then 2 in a red, return convenient target from your graveyard to your hand. So these ones, enchantment creatures that come back from the graveyard have been better than the ones that don't. And but I still don't like enchant creatures in general because they do get 2 for 1. And giving something +1/+1 in menace then can't block for 1 is okay. The more that you have suspect synergies, then the better this is going to be. So I would usually give this sort of thing a D, but I'm going to give it a C because you can bring it back from your graveyard. And there's, like if you do end up self-milling or discarding it, then being able to bring it back later in the game is decent. So, hey, what's up, Cardinator? Yeah, so we've seen returning enchantments in a couple of formats. Streets of New Capenna, and there was a green one as well that returned over and over that gave +2/+2, I believe. I can't remember the format though. So Cornered Crook is 4 and a red. When Cornered Crook enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice an artifact. When you do, Cornered Crook deals 3 damage to any target. Hell yeah, B. So there should be a lot of artifacts between treasure, clue tokens, etc. That this is going to be a deal 3 damage for a clue token onto something. And there are, the disguised creatures do have ward. So it'll be interesting that the point removal is going to be better after the creatures are no longer disguised than when they have the ward. So it's going to be a fun mechanic to see, like the bounce cards in blue, if it's worth killing the thing after it's become undisguised, because it's kind of already done its thing once it's undisguised. Like usually gets in for 6 damage or whatever. So I'm curious to see if the point removal is, if I'm being too high on it, but I think I'm going to start this one off with a B. I do think there's enough artifact synergy in the set. Prime Novelist, you got a 1/3 for 2 and a red creature Goblin Bard. Whenever you sacrifice an artifact, put a +1/+1 counter on Crime Novelist and add a red. Okay, so we're starting to see a little bit of a sacrifice artifact theme, and curious to see which archetype is going to care the most about sacrificing artifacts and artifact production. So there's definitely an archetype that wants this. It is a permanent counter and allows you to change your clues into mana. So you can ramp instead of card draw. So that is interesting. 2/4 blocks the 2/2 wards relatively well. I like this. I think there's something it's something speaking to me about this one. So like turn 1 or turn 2, you make an artifact clue token. You play this on 3, and then you can immediately play something for 1, or next turn go up to like 5 mana. So it kind of depends on what the curve looks like in the set and like how many interesting 4 drops there are versus 5 drops. Like if your spot that you really want to be in is 4, then this is less interesting. But I like the flexibility of this. And so I'm going to give this one a B. It's probably a little bit too high, but I believe that there's an archetype that's really going to want this. And then even outside of it, I think it's okay enough just as a 2/4 that produced a mana to block the disguised creatures. But you're right. This does not activate. Okay. This does not allow you to actually sacrifice the artifact, right? It's not a enabler. That's a good point. So, but you can sacrifice the clue tokens for 1 as long as you're going to use that mana for something else. So you sacrifice for 2 and you get a red back. Okay, that might be too high for a B. Then I'm going to give it a C. You're right. I was reading it that you could just sacrifice an artifact to put a +1/+1 counter at it. So whenever needing an enabler makes it quite a bit worse. Good catch, Herbivore. Thank you. Let's give it a C. All right, demand answers. We've got a 1 and a red for an instant at common. As an additional cost to cast the spell, sacrifice an artifact or discard a card, and then draw 2 cards. All right, well, we've seen this card a lot, right? It tends to be really good in the decks that want to just spew everything out for very cheap. It's worse in the decks that have, Well, I guess this is draw, not play, right? So like Reckless Impulse is worse when you have a higher converted mana cost. This one is just draw. So we've seen in blue red there was the one in a blue that allows you to draw a card and investigate. So this helps you if you're doing the spell slinger like cycle thing, and um, just gives you stuff for collecting evidence later, right? Because you discard this, you play this and you discard something. So this can kind of set up like a collect evidence of 2 plus X, where X is whatever you discarded. And then it's not, and it's also a card draw. So I like this. I like this sort of thing. I like it a lot in a lot of different decks too. I think that I guess if you discard a card, it's card neutral with the demand answers. If you sacrifice an artifact, then it's just a single draw, which is kind of what you're trying to do with clue tokens anyway. So I don't know. I think it's going to be good, at least in like blue red, and I'm not sure it's going to be something that you want in every single deck. But if I'm right that the archetype is about, or the deck, the format in general is about going big, then this is the sort of thing that is nice for that. Getting to your, discarding your stuff that's no longer useful, and then yeah, I'm gonna give this a B. I'm gonna give this a B because I think that there's gonna be kind of a tricky thing going on in the set where you play cheap creatures into disguised creatures that then are mana intensive later, and so like you're gonna have these 2-drops that like are good for not getting steamrolled early on against your opponent's tempo that are not really great top decks later in the game, and then you can discard them and filter. So B might be too high, but I think I'm gonna give it a B. Expedited Inheritance is a double pip red enchantment. Whenever a creature is dealt damage, its controller may exile that many cards from the top of their library, and then they may play those cards until the end of their next turn. All right. Well, I mean, I like that more than I think the Reckless Impulse, I think. Especially because red kind of feels like it's going to be doing the suspect, like menace, attack, 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 just like casualties will be had. And then this gives you additional ways to refuel. So I'm going to give this one a B, especially because it's not it's not like a one-time thing. The one downside with this sort of thing is that like you could chew through your library very, very quickly. But it is a may, it's not forced. Yeah. And it's until end of their next turn. So you don't even have to play it like post combat. It gives you an additional turn to play it. Yeah, I like this a lot. Let's go. Yeah. We're kind of seeing that Herbivore. We're seeing like Herbivore was saying Felden at home. It's kind of like the white enchantment that gains 1 life is like Lunarch Veteran at home. So we're seeing these like enchantments that are doing something that has already existed, at least in the standard space. So yeah, kind of a Felden effect, but in an enchantment form instead of a creature, which I think is worse. So yeah, the white card is a case that I think it's a case. Yeah, no, it's a case that whenever a creature comes into play, you gain a life, or a creature you control comes into play, you gain a life. And then if you've gained 5, it solves the case, and then you can sacrifice the case to play creatures from your graveyard. So kind of an interesting theme, at least, right? And so we have Expose the Culprit, which is a 1 and a red or choose one or both. We got Uncommon Instant here. Turn target face down creature face up. Hello. Remember all that, like how I was saying, is there a way to undisguise your creatures for cheap? Here's the answer, right? So now those things that have disguise 6, you can just flip them up for super cheap. So that's at least some synergies. Exile any number of face-up creatures you control with disguise in a face-down pile, shuffle that pile, then cloak them. Oh, the masquerade kind of feeling in this one is really great. So cloak is a new mechanic. Cloak, but it is basically like disguise, but it doesn't have to be a creature with disguise. And this one does have to be disguised cards, but it allows you to flip them back down if you have an interesting thing that only happens when you have revealed the creature, right? Some of them are like when you turn them face up, do X, right? So this allows you to replay those and hide amongst your disguised creatures where your bomb is once again. And it gives it ward again, you know? So like I think this is gonna play pretty well. And as long as you have the disguise synergies, then this is gonna be pretty good. What's your question? A cloaked creature with disguise you can flip up for either cost? That is a good point. So if you have the face down creatures, if you make them face down again, make them into 2/2s with ward 2, they have to turn up for their cloaked costs, not their disguised costs. Right. So if you have a cheap disguise cost, then this is not great. But most of them are expensive disguise costs. And so we've seen a 3-drop that has a disguise cost of 6. So you would rather it be cloaked so that when you flip it up for its cloak cost, which would be 3 instead of 6, then you can kind of like negate the drawbacks that we saw in black specifically. So this is definitely a synergistic card, though. It doesn't do anything on its own. If you don't have a creature, it is kind of a do nothing. But this is the kind of thing that you're going to want if you have a whole bunch of disguised creatures. So I'm going to give it D for situational. If you're doing the disguise theme, which I think there's a lot of it in the set, then this is going to go up to be more of a playable card. But I'm going to start it out with it being situational. Herbivore, you're saying that you assumed it would be like cons where the disguise cost is lower than the casting cost. Yeah, we haven't seen that just across the board yet. There are cards that have a more expensive casting cost than their disguise, but not always. So at least, or maybe I'm wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure most of the ones that we've seen, at least with the negative enter the battlefield effects, have relatively high disguise costs, more so than their casting cost. There is kind of a theme of like you can play this for 6, or you can you can disguise reveal it for 5, and so there are some that are more like the cons kind of thing, but they're definitely not like all across the board like that. Felonious Rage, we've got a common instant for 1 red. Target creature you control gets +2/+0 and gains haste until end of turn. When that creature dies this turn, create a 2/2 white and blue detective creature token. So we've seen this before. Okay, a couple of things to note about this card. One, we're seeing like a Jeskai spells hint, maybe. The fact that this makes a white and blue detective creature token. Haven't really gotten into the mana fixing, but the very, very beginning, the very first card we looked at was a colorless mana fixer case that grabs you a land. So I do think there's going to be a Jeskai spells deck, and at least maybe, right? And then an instant that gives +2/+0 and haste has been kind of eh. But if that creature dies, getting a 2/2 token out of it is pretty excellent. And so like putting this on a suspect that, like I said, there's going to be a lot of casualties in red. I think this might be playable. I don't know if it's going to be something that like I just absolutely want, because it's kind of hard without playing the set. But I'm going to give this one a D. I don't think it's unplayable, but I mean it's kind of a shock. But again, it's one of those cards that can get 2 for 1, and your creature might not necessarily die to give you the 2/2 value. So how much are you going to pay for +2/+0 and haste at common? I don't want a whole deck of these, I don't think. So, and then we've got Frantic Scapegoat, which is a 1/1 haste goat for red. When it enters the battlefield, suspect it, meaning it has menace and it can't block. And then whenever 1 or more other creatures enter the battlefield under your control, if Frantic Scapegoat is suspected, you may suspect 1 of the other creatures. If you do, Frantic Scapegoat is no longer suspected. Cool. Okay. So we get a 1/1 menace that can't block for 1. And then whenever 1 or more other creatures enter the battlefield under control, you can suspect them and make it into a menace. So this curves out really nicely. I'm going to give this one a B. I think that red in general, like I at least the black red space seems to be doing the suspected theme. And So being able to just aggressively attack on turn 1 and then make something else into a better attacker, and then maybe you can sacrifice the Frantic Scapegoat or figure out some way to get value out of it later, seems pretty good. Fugitive Codebreaker is a 2/1 prowess haste for 1 and a red. You get a rare Goblin Rogue, and it's got Disguise 5 and a red. So here's a perfect example, Herbivore, of a card you would rather have cloaked than its Disguise, right? This cost is reduced by 1 for each instant and sorcery card in your graveyard. And then when Fugitive Codebreaker is turned face up, notably, doesn't have to be through Disguise. You can cloak it and then reveal it that way as well, right? Or the, whatever it was, the expose the culprit. So this, the more cards that you have like this in your deck, then the more you're going to want the expose the culprit card. But when Fugitives turn face up, discard your hand, then draw 3 cards. So there's kind of an answer. The blue-red spells deck is kind of trying to do this madness thing while simultaneously drawing a whole bunch of cards. So, and then the more instances and sorceries that you've kind of cycled into your graveyard. So, like the 1 in a blue to draw a card and create an evidence, as well as the what was it? Was it called that had the draw 2 card? Yeah, demand answers. So this sort of thing, like there's definitely going to be a blue-red cycle through a whole bunch of spells deck. And then this also just has prowess, so the more spells you're playing, the bigger it becomes. Yeah, all right. Yeah, I'll give this one a B. I think it fits well enough into what that blue-red deck is trying to do. I'm not sure you're going to disguise it a whole lot of the time, but you could. Depends on how many other cards you have that have disguise, right? Yeah, so realistically, I assume that you're going to be able to get this to undisguise for 4. You have to play 2 spells before turn 4. A lot of cycling. So like you disguise it on turn 3, turn 4. All you had to do is that's a bit hard. You'd have to have done a spell on turn 1 and a spell on turn 2. I'm sure you want to flip it that soon though. Anyway, curious to see how the disguise plays, but even just as a 2/1 prowess haste, I think it's decent. Galvanize, we've got a 1 and a red for a common instant. When Galvanize deals 3 damage to target Galvanize deals 3 damage to target creature. If you've drawn 2 or more cards this turn, Galvanize deals 5 damage to that creature instead. So simultaneously, we also have like a draw 2 mechanic going on in blue-red. And depends on how cheap your cards are, Herbivore. If you're just like playing a whole bunch of cards like this that are like 1 and 2 cost, so by turn 5, you have 15 mana, and you know, if all of your cards are 1 and 2, you can get through everything to flip, to be hellbent on turn 5. So 6 or 7 if it's a little bit, past that, right? So it really depends on what the rest of your repertoire looks like. But we've seen enough cheap cards that draw, cheap cards with the clue tokens and instances and sorceries that are relatively cheap in general in blue-red. So I wouldn't be surprised if you could get hellbent by like turn 5. Depends on, you get hellbent and then draw and then use your clue to draw some more, and then leverage having a whole bunch of spells in your graveyard for collecting evidence. I think I'm starting to see like at least a potential strategy there, right? As far as this card goes, we get deal 3 or deal 5. And I think drawing 2 cards is going to be relatively easy to do with all of the looters, specifically creatures that draw a card and then discard a card when various circumstances happen. That I think a lot of times this will be a deal 5 damage. So even if it's not, I don't mind Incinerate, right? In instant speed 3 damage to target creature is like okay to me. I guess Incinerate was any target, maybe. But still, I think this is okay. So we've had Strangle. Strangle deals 3 damage to target creature for 1 red. So you want to be able to hit this for 5. I think there's enough draw 2 in the set that you can reliably do that. So I'm going to give this a C. I don't think this is like top tier removal like a Braid, a common, but I think it's going to be okay. Yeah, thanks for hanging out, Herbivore. Good luck with making a video game. That sounds fun. And here's a card that is frustrating to Isaiah because in the flavor text it says her, and that is definitely a male orangutan. The females don't have the whatever those are called, the facey doodads. But anyway, we get a 2/2 reach when it enters the battlefield. Choose one. So we get a 2/2 ape with reach for 2 and a red. When it enters the battlefield, destroy up to 1 target artifact, or sacrifice an artifact. If you do, put 2 +1/+1 counters on Gearbane Orangutan. I like it. You know, like you either like smash one of their clue tokens and then play a 2/2, or you sacrifice one of your clue tokens and put a +1/+1 counter on it. And notably, we've already seen like cards that benefit but don't have an outlet for sacrificing an artifact. So this has that kind of synergy. So I'm gonna give this one a C. And it also has reach, right? So if you get a 4/4 reach, like it seems to be blocking a fair amount of the flyers that we've seen so far, or at least trading with them. So I like seeing this at common. We've got Goblin Mask Maker, which is a Goblin Citizen. For 1, you get a 1/2. Whenever Goblin Mask Maker attacks, face down spells you cast this turn cost 1 less to cast. Okay. Face down spells you cast this turn cost 1 less to cast. Does that mean that if you play it for, like, you can play a 2/2 ward 2 for 2 if you attack with this? Yeah, I think that's correct. So being able to get those out for 2 instead of 3 is pretty good. And a 1/2 probably can attack on turn 1 and be okay. We haven't seen a whole bunch of grizzly bears. Going to be dependent on whether or not you're the play versus the draw with this sort of thing, about whether or not you're attacking into a 2-drop. But as long as you're doing the disguise thing, I think I like this. So I'm going to give this one a D. I do think that, like, most of the, even if you don't have face down spells, then a 1/2 for 1 is kind of eh. You know, it's not super impressive, and it gets out valued quickly. But if you have a whole bunch of disguise, then you're going to want this. So there's going to be an archetype that wants it, but I don't think it's going to be the majority of them. And then we've got Harried Dronesmith, which is a 2/3 human artificer for 3 and a red. You get, at the beginning of combat on your turn, create a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying. It gains haste until end of turn. Sacrifice it at the beginning of your next instep. Hello, this is an enabler, right? It doesn't have to attack. You get to create a token that then sacrifices and triggers all of your stuff that cares about artifact sacrifice. And yeah, so I like this a lot. I'm going to give this a B. I think, and you know, it just keeps creating these 1/1 Thopter artifact creature tokens. So you just have to figure out how to, like, make that valuable. And I think there's enough in what I've seen for this at least to be synergistic somewhere. So I like enablers more than I like the payoffs, right? We've got the Incinerator of the Guilty, which is a 6/6 flying trample dragon at Mythic for 4 double pip red. And whenever Incinerator of the Guilty deals combat damage to a player, you may collect evidence X. When you do, Incinerator of the Guilty deals X damage to each creature and each planeswalker that player controls. Whoa! Okay, so that stuff that you just, like, that 2-cost thing that you use to filter to find your Incinerator of the Guilty, you can exile and deal 2 damage to their whole board. It's one-sided too. That's disgusting. It doesn't do anything on ETB, but, like, if they don't answer this, then all of your graveyard becomes deal X damage, where X is the amount of mana value in your graveyard. Yeah, this is a problem, Coviner. Hope you're having a good Friday. And double pip and red is the only thing that's keeping this from being in every single deck that it is opened into. So I'm going to give it a B. I do think that this is potentially one of those cards that's an A. But double pip and red is going to make it want to just be in red decks. I don't know, 6 costs, like, you probably get away with having not that much red. I don't know, it could be an A. But I'm going to give it a B. If this was a single pip red card, it would be an S, right? I guess if it did the collect evidence on ETB instead of dealing combat damage, it would definitely be an S. But yeah, we'll give this one a B. I think this is a fantastic mythic. Innocent Bystander. We've got a 2/1 Goblin Citizen at common for 1 and a red. Whenever Innocent Bystander is dealt 3 or more damage, investigate. Okay, so if it gets blocked by a 2/2, which there seems to be a lot of in this set, it does nothing. I'm gonna give this a D. I might even give this one an F, right? Um, it's close. It at least trades with a 2/2 that is, costing your opponent 3 to play. You can trade with a disguised creature. But a lot of the disguised creatures, like at least some of them turn into 1Xs with higher toughness than 2. So you end up just getting, you don't end up trading, it ends up being a chump. And then you don't even investigate because the thing was less than power 2, right? There's a whole power 2 theme too. So I just feel like this one's not very impressive unless you have additional goblin synergies. So D. Knife. Got one of the clue equipments for uncommon for 1 red. As long as it's your turn, equipped creature gets +1/+0 and has first strike. Equipment costs 2, and you can sacrifice it for 2 colorless to draw a card, like it's a clue. The more that you care about the artifacts being sacrificed in clue count, then you're going to want the clue equipment more. I think that most of the time I'm not going to want to be doing this. Outside of that synergy, I don't like this as just an equipment. The equip cost 2 is just too expensive for what the clue equipments are offering. So I'm going to give this one a D. I do think there's going to be an archetype that wants as many clues as it possibly can get, and that's going to be its home. Krenko, Baron of 10th Street. Okay, so we are returning to Ravnica in this block, and we get to see Krenko, so that's fun. Krenko is a 3/3 legendary goblin for 2 and a red with haste, and you can tap it, sacrifice an artifact to put a +1/+1 counter on each goblin you control. And then whenever an artifact is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you may pay 1 red. If you do, create a 1/1 red goblin creature token. It gains haste until end of turn. All right, I don't feel right off the bat that this is broken as much as like Krenko used or is, I guess. The older version of Krenko, but this will see constructed play, right? Like if you have a whole bunch of goblins, I didn't really pay attention in black to how many goblin creature types there were. If there is actually an archetype that's like heavily doing the goblin thing, um, no way it will see constructed play. I don't know, I think that's a bold statement. Like I think that it's doing enough if you, because like constructed, all you have to do is be able to figure out a way to loop this bad boy and get infinite counters on your goblins or whatever, right? The fact that like you sacrifice an artifact, it gives you a red too, makes me think that like somebody's going to figure out how to do some sort of loop with this. But I don't think it's going to be like in every red deck, right? I think it's just going to be in like some, some goblin deck somewhere, and like I don't know if it's high enough for historic, right? So there's always a goblin deck though, right? Look at Jim Davis and Mog Mondays, right? Like it's a popular archetype. As far as limited goes, a 3/3 haste for 3 is fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And the fact that you sacrifice a clue and you can pay a red to get a 1/1 goblin creature token with haste can work. And it does allow you to trigger, it's an enabler for sacrificing your artifact. So all of these are signs that are, I'm just going to be like, sure, right? It's okay. I'll give it a B. Because like you don't even need that many goblins in your deck already, because you can make more 1/1 goblins that then get bigger every time that you sacrifice an artifact. So I don't think it's amazing, but like I think it's playable. And then we've got Krenko's Buzz Crusher, which is a rare artifact creature insect thopter flying trample 4/4 for 2 double pip red. And when it enters the battlefield, for each player, destroy up to 1 non-basic land that player controls. For each land destroyed this way, its controller may search their library for a basic land card, put it into the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. Okay, so we get like a demolition field, or we get non-basic land hate on a 4/4 flying trample creature. Probably better in constructed, where you want that kind of effect for punishing decks that are already playing a whole bunch of non-basic lands. I haven't looked at the basic non-basic lands in this set, so if everybody's going to be playing non-basic lands, then that makes this more valuable. Oh, Viner, you really like the art? Yeah, it's got a goblin vibe to it for sure. And then of course, like the Thopters with goblins is a classic. So it doesn't do anything on ETB except for like destroy a non-basic, and I don't know how important that is. And then a 4/4 flying trample for 2 and double pip red is kind of like all right. It's not amazing, but I mean, I'd play a 4/4 flyer for 2 double pip X in other sets, regardless of what the other stuff is, as long as it's not a drawback. And you don't have to destroy a land if you don't want to. So I think I'll give this one a B. I think it's just like it's a powerful flyer. The double pip red is going to be its worst downfall, right? Lamplight Phoenix, 1 double pip red for a 3/3 flyer. When Lamplight Phoenix dies, you may exile it and collect Evidence 4. If you do, return Lamplight Phoenix to the battlefield tapped. Yeah, I think this is the kind of payoff that you're looking to play in like the blue-red spells deck, where you have a lot of spells that you're cycling to your graveyard that you can then use as evidence later. And I wish it had haste. That's my only thought on that, is that I wish it had haste. So I'm gonna give this one a B. The double pip in red is a little bit restrictive. It's not gonna go into every single deck. But I'm gonna be happy to open this one up. Pack one, pick one. Lala, you giving that one an S? I mean, yeah, I mean it is a recurring threat, right? Not a whole lot of exile too. We haven't seen any exile stuff, I don't think. Offender at large, we get a common 5/4 giant rogue for 4 and a red with disguise. So this one, for example, Herbivore was asking how many have disguise costs equal to its converted mana cost or cheaper and whatnot. This one is just equal to it. And then when Offender at large enters the battlefield or is turned face up to 1 target creature gets +2/+0 until end of turn. So disguise cost suddenly hit for 7, 5, kind of on par with what we've seen the other disguise cards doing. I'm gonna give this one a D, unless you're doing the disguise thing. If you have a whole bunch of disguise cards, then this goes up. Which I find myself saying that on repeat, which makes me think that like every deck is doing the disguise thing, which means that I should just have been giving these all C's instead of D's. But it's all right. It's not amazing. I mean, I guess a 5/4 for 5 maybe is a little bit better than a D. Get +2/+0 until end of turn. Kind of, I guess if it was a 5/5, that would be great. Maybe D is a little bit too low, but I'm going with a D on it. I'm sticking to it. Person of interest is a 3 and a red human rogue for a 2/2. Wow, not even a hill giant. When person of interest enters the battlefield, suspect it, and then create a 2/2 white and blue detective creature token. Okay, so here we have another nod to there being kind of not strictly a 2-color theme. So this is another one that like we've got a red card that's creating a white and blue detective. So it could be a Jeskai detective space. Seems like there might be something there. So you get a 2/2 menace that spawns a 2/2. Sure, yeah, I like that sort of thing. I'll give this one a B. Right? I think that like if you're going wide, this requires 3 blockers to block this card. So I like that. Might be a little bit high, but this is definitely a common that I like. As far as the commons go, I'm going to give this one a B, and we'll see if it ends up being one of the top commons. Pyrotechnic Performer is a 3/2 Viashino Assassin for 1 and a red, and it's got Disguise 1 red. Okay. Whenever Pyrotechnic Performer or another creature you control is turned face up, that creature deals damage equal to its power to each opponent. Whoa! Holy cow! I like this one a lot. All right, so we get to so you could play this out on 2. Play out a disguised creature on 3, undisguise that creature, and that creature deals damage equal to its power to each opponent. So like, I was reading it as it deals its power to each to a target creature. It has to go face. Okay, but still, you get a 3/2 that you get a 2/2 that flips into a 3/2 that deals 3 damage to your opponent for 1 red. Let's get this party started. Yeah. All right. Yeah, I think I'll give this one a B. Lala teasing me about giving everything Bs. Um, if it dealt damage to a creature, it would be an A, right? I guess maybe with the ward that might be a little bit tricky, but I think the disguise is going to be kind of difficult for your opponent to block. Because then you know like the one that's unblocked, you just undisguise it and deal a bunch of damage to your opponent, and this helps do just exactly that. And some of the disguised creatures have like power 6, and so if you flip it up, you suddenly deal 6 damage from the creature and 6 damage from this creature's ability. So I can see a lot of direct damage coming from the disguised creatures. Reckless Detective, we get a 0/3 Devil Detective for 1 in a red at uncommon. Whenever Reckless Detective attacks, you may sacrifice an artifact or discard a card. If you do, draw a card, and Reckless Detective gets +2/+0 until end of turn. Okay. Kind of like Festival Crasher, but a 0/3 instead of a 1/3. It blocks the 2/2s, ward 2s, helps prevent your opponent getting in with Disguise. And then it itself it enables the sacrificing an artifact, which I think there's an archetype that definitely wants to do that. Discarding a card feels worse than sacrificing the artifact to give it +2/+0 until end of turn. And notably, you have to do it before they declare blockers. Yeah, I don't know. I think there's going to be one that really likes this. I'm going to give this a C. I think that like I could see myself picking it up in a fair amount of decks, and then the deck that really does want to do the sacrifice and artifact theme probably wants to take the Reckless Detective up a little bit higher. Red Herring, we get an artifact creature clue fish. So we get a 2/2 for 1 in red with haste. Red Herring attacks each combat if able. And then you can tap 2 colorless to sacrifice Red Herring and draw a card. Okay, so this kind of reminds me of the Valley Dancers in Khans of Tarkir. Get a 2/2 haste for 2 that just like attacks earlier than your opponent playing the 2/2s on 3. And then later you can sacrifice it to draw a card. It's not amazing, but a 2/2 haste for 2 that like you can do something with later after it's like gonna kill itself is okay, right? So I'll give this one a C. That might be too high, but I think that a 2/2 haste for 2 is just okay. And it is going to be attacking though, so it doesn't really work well on blocking because it has to like it can never be blocking really. So it is a little bit lopsided versus play versus draw. So maybe C is too high, but I'm going to start it off with a C. And you know, it's an artifact that like it does the artifact it triggers the artifact sacrifice thing, and it has an ability to trigger it on its own. So Rebel Belt Braggart, we get a 5/5 Viashino Warrior for 4 in a red. Whenever Rebel Belt Braggart attacks, if it's not suspected, you may suspect it. A suspected creature has menace and can't block. Triple homicide in a building I set on fire. Nice. Um, so it's a 5/5 for 5 that can have menace and then not block, but it's a May. I like the flexibility of this. I'm gonna give this a C. I think that like this is fine. This is one of the 5-drops. You know, I think this is one of the cards that I'm gonna look to put into the 5-drop slot. Because of the flexibility of it being a 5/5 for 5 that can block, or a 5/5 menace if you're like needing some additional gas. Ooh, okay, shock. All right, so we have an instant speed common for 1 red, deals 2 damage to any target. So you can burn your opponent's face if you're getting in for like disguise damage. There's a possibility there. The downside with this is dealing 2 damage to something that is a disguised creature. You have the ward 2. So if you pay the ward 2, it's even with the 3 mana that your opponent played. I don't know. This is one that like you have to go and calculate how much of the set has 2 toughness. So I think I'm gonna go with a C. That might be too low, but the fact that a lot of the 2/2s have ward makes me feel worse about this. But instant speed removal is kind of like shock is kind of like a braid, right? I mean, like it's it's a classic, right? And so maybe that's a little bit too low for shock. But yeah, we'll start it off with a C. Suspicious Detonation. We get a sorcery at common for 4 and a red. The spell costs 3 less to cast if you've sacrificed an artifact this turn. Okay. This spell can't be countered, so great if you're targeting something that has the ward. Deals 4 damage to target creature. Okay. So if you've sacrificed an artifact this turn, then it's 1 and a red to deal 4, which is okay. And then if you're paying 5 to do it, it's kind of like right? I'll give this one a C. And if you're in the artifact deck that's like specifically good at sacrificing everything, then maybe this goes up a little bit to like a C plus or a B minus. But I could see wanting to play this just as 5 cost removal. Then we've got Torch the Witness, which is a sorcery for an uncommon sorcery for X and a red. Torch the Witness deals twice X damage to target creature. If excess damage was dealt that way, it was dealt to that creature this way, investigate. Okay, so I like this. So this is kind of like the heat ray that I was talking about earlier, like disintegrate. Usually you're trading down, but since this deals twice as much damage, then it's not necessarily trading down. The ward 2, so you would need to pay 1 for that, and then 1 red, and so you'd still be doing 4 to destroy a disguised creature, which is trading down in the mana value that your opponent spent. But then you get an investigate off of it. You get a token. Deal 2 damage for 1 and a red. Deal 4 damage for 2 and a red. Yeah, it's always going to be a little bit under what I want it to be doing. But you get an investigate out of it. Sure, I'll give it a C. I don't know. It doesn't quite feel like premium red removal to me, but if you're doing enough with that clue token, then that feels like that could be useful. 3 and a red would be 6 damage. Better at killing really big things than it is small things. Vengeful Tracker, we get 1 and a red for a uncommon human detective, 2/2. Got a Grizzly Bear. Whenever an opponent sacrifices an artifact, Vengeful Tracker deals 2 damage to them. What? Archetype hate? Okay, so the red archetype that sacrifices an artifact was just doing too much. Well, it prevents them from like popping clue tokens. And a Grizzly Bear tends to be okay. I don't know how important clue token investigation is going to be for every archetype. I think it's going to be enough, right? So this one is a tough one about whether or not to give this a B, because it is just a Grizzly Bear that your opponent can play around its effect. So I'm gonna give this a C. I think that I like 2-drops. 2/2 tend to make the cut. I think this will make the cut. I'm excited to open it up as an uncommon. Not really. I think this could have been a common, but maybe I'm undervaluing how often people are popping clues in the set. So, hey, we made it to green. I'm going to take a quick little break here, and then I'll continue the set review. And we're going to get through green, and then multicolored, and artifacts and lands. So we got a fair amount to get through, and yeah. So I'll be right back. All right, let's continue this mammer jammer. Aftermath Analyst. Why did my brain stop on that one, man? All right, we've got a 1/3 uncommon elf detective for 1 and a green. When Aftermath Analyst enters the battlefield, mill 3 cards. Hey, self mill, nice. Okay, there's definitely the collect evidence and the reanimator strategy that we saw in black. This is going to be really nice in Golgari. 3 and a green, sacrifice Aftermath Analyst. Return all land cards from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Huh. Okay. It's a little bit expensive, but if you've milled a whole bunch of land cards, I guess that could ramp you pretty quickly. Like, you have to say, I mean, you're not honestly, I'm just going to look at it as a 1/3 that mills 3 cards, and I want to do that. I think I want to do that in a lot. I don't think it is just Golgari either, right? Like, I think that there's enough for graveyard stuff in the other archetypes that I think I'm going to give this a B. It's a 2-drop. It blocks the 2/2s that your opponents are playing on 3, and it is an enabler. So I'm gonna give this one a B. Then we've got Airtight Alibi, which is an enchantment at common for 2 and a green flash enchant creature. When the Airtight Alibi enters the battlefield, untap enchanted creature. It gains hexproof until end of turn. If it's suspected, it's no longer suspected. And the enchanted creature gets +2/+2 and can't become suspected. Okay, so your opponent can't block your, like, because one way that you can use suspect is to remove your opponent's blockers for a deck that doesn't want to be the beatdown. So if you're playing against like control, they're posting up with their 4/4 reach creature. Um, you're gonna want to make sure that it can't become suspected. So that's kind of cool. It's expensive for what it's doing though. It gains hexproof +2/+2 at flash. Like it's okay. Um, but I'm not super stoked about this. If you put it on a flyer, it's only hexproof until end of turn. Does untap it and gives it +2/+2. So this is going to be one of those that, like, you know, you're going to want to pay attention to this if your opponent has 3 mana untapped and green. But I'm not sure that I like this sort of thing. Again, because of it getting 2-for-1. It's more of a reactive card and defensive. So I'm going to give this one a D. And there are going to be situations where this is going to be nice, though. Analyze the Pollen. We get a sorcery at rare for 1 green. As an additional cost to cast this spell, you may collect evidence 8. Search your library for a basic land card. If evidence was collected, instead search your library for a creature or land card. Reveal that card, put it into your hand, then shuffle. Oh, okay, so you can get a non-basic land if you do the collect evidence 8, or you can tutor up a specific creature. And but what I like about it is it's excellent fixing, right? It's what, you know, I like to cut a land for each one of these that I have. I'm a little sad to see this at rare instead of at the common spot that we've seen in the past, right? Um, 'Cause, like, collect evidence 8, I don't know how easily that's going to be to turn on, right? But just for the effect of being able to play this over a land and fix for multicolored stuff, which there's been a couple of hints there are maybe some um like teamer kind of space is possible. So I'm gonna give this one a B. I don't think that it's like amazing. It's not game changing, but like it's doing enough that I'm interested in picking it up. All right, we got Archdruid's Charm, which is triple green for a rare instant. You get to choose one of 3 options. Search your library for a creature or land card and reveal it. Put it onto the battlefield tapped if it's a land card. Otherwise, put it into your hand, then shuffle. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. It deals damage equal to its power to target creature you don't control. And then exile target artifact or enchantment. Okay. Fixing, +1/+1, fight, not a fight. And then an exile target artifact or enchantment that gives you a little bit of enchantment hate. And we've seen a lot of cases that once they're solved, they stay on the battlefield. So if this is the only like disenchant and it's at rare at triple pip green, oh my goodness. Triple pip green makes this almost unplayable though. Like you basically have to be mono green. I think all of the stuff that it's doing is fine though. So I'll give this one a C, which for a rare means that I won't often pack one pick one it. But like if you kind of get it when you're in mostly green, I think it could be playable. The tutoring up a creature I think is pretty tempting as well. And then removal if you desperately need it. Yeah. Too bad it's triple pip green. Audience with Trostani is a rare sorcery for 2 and a green. Create a 0/1 green plant creature token, then draw cards equal to the number of differently named creature tokens that you control. Huh. Okay. You create a 0/1, then draw cards equal to the number of differently named creature tokens you control. Have we seen a whole lot of creature tokens? We've seen like a lot of clue tokens. We've seen a couple of detective tokens in blue-white. wonder if this is like secretly a Bant card. Um, and then you get to draw cards equal to that. That seems hard to do, right? Doesn't this feel kind of like a? This feels like a constructed card to me. Unless there's something that I'm missing in green and being able to create a whole bunch of differently named tokens, I'm not super stoked on this. If you do play it like so there's a white creature that creates that's a 1/1 that creates a 2/2 detective. And then so if you play this is a divination that creates a 0/1. If you have another token in play already by turn 3, I can see this being a lot of draw in some deck. I'm gonna go with the D on this one though, because like without any further enable or combo, it is simply create a 0/1 and draw a card, which for 3 is way too expensive. Does have that, it has that keyword draw a card, which always makes me feel like I'm undervaluing it. Axebane Feryx is a 4/4 for 2 double pip green rare beast, and it has Death Touch and Haste. And then it also has Ward, Collect Evidence 4. So your opponent has to have evidence to be able to destroy a 4/4 Death Touch Haste. Give this baby trample and let's go. Double pip in green though makes it so that you can't like splash it into every deck. I'm gonna give this one a B. Death Touch Haste it's a spicy. It's a very spicy. Bite Down on Crime. Get a 3 and a green for sorcery. As an additional cost to cast the spell, you may collect evidence 6. This spell costs 2 less to cast if evidence was collected. So you can either do 4 or you can do 2 and collect evidence 6. Target creature you control gets +2/+0 until end of turn, and it deals damage equal to its power to target creature you don't control at sorcery speed. All right, so this is the classic like bite spell in green. Simic is going to have to use this sort of thing. I'll give it a C. Usually there's removal that I would rather play, but like there's going to be some decks where you have to play this kind of card, and it's not amazing. Case of the Locked Hothouse. So I guess if, in case you're new to Magic the Gathering and bite spells in general, the problem with this is instant speed removal. If they can 2-for-1 you. So, Case of the Locked Hothouse. You may play an additional land on each of your turns, which turns out to be not very good in limited. And then to solve, you control 7 or more lands. Okay. So far, not liking this one. Solved, you may look at the top card of your library anytime, and you may play lands and cast creatures and enchantment spells from the top of your library. Well, it gives you some good late game dig, but it's really slow. So unless you're ramping to getting lands into play, this also is a 4-cost enchantment that doesn't do anything. Because like by turn 4, how often do you have land 5 and land 6 in your hand? So I'm gonna give this one an F for limited. This is not the type of card that I'm looking to play. Case of the Trampled Garden is 2 and a green. When this case enters the battlefield, distribute 2 +1/+1 counters among 1 or 2 target creatures you control. Okay. And then to solve, creatures you control have total power 8 or greater. Okay. Solved, whenever you attack, put a +1/+1 counter on target attacking creature. It gains trample until end of turn. Dude, this is better than that. Like, they got this backwards. This should have been the uncommon. This should be the rare, right? So you get 2 +1/+1 counters for 3. And then if you solve it, you get an additional +1/+1 counter, and it gives you trample, which is like a good win condition to push damage through. So I'll give this one a B. I've liked the case cards. They're all at uncommon, though. Then we got Chalk Outline here. Is a enchantment uncommon for 3 and a green. Whenever 1 or more creature cards leave your graveyard, create a 2/2 white and blue detective creature token, then investigate. Okay, so yeah, more 2/2 white and blue detectives. I don't like this sort of card. So we've seen this sort of thing where like when your creatures die, draw a card, right? I'm trying to remember the like burial rights, or it's a green card, right? The problem is when you play this on turn 4 and nothing of yours is dying, or you don't have any creatures to die, it doesn't do anything. And then, like, I would rather just be drawing a card than I would be creating a 2/2 detective and investigating. Notably, though, it does trigger off of tokens. It doesn't say non-token creatures. So your tokens can die and come back with additional tokens. So if you're heavily leaning into the token strategy, then this replaces your tokens that are attacking every turn or whatever, right? And then you get investigations, which could have some synergies. I'll give it a D. I think that like there's a space in there where it like might be okay, but for the most part, this isn't something that I want to be doing. And then we've got Culvert Ambusher, which is a uncommon 4/5 worm horror for 3 double pip green. When it enters the battlefield or is turned face up, target creature blocks this turn if able. Snipe your guys thing, and it's a 4/5. Hey, you know, I don't mind the 4/5 stat block 5. And you don't have to pay the double pip green if you are doing the disguise route. This is a good way to get rid of your disguised stuff your opponent has played. Can be multiple blocked afterwards, but like you at least get to do that one thing. 5? Sure. That seems reasonable. We'll give that one a C. Fanatical Strength, you get a 1 and a green. Target creature gets +3/+3 and gains trample until end of turn. Nice. So we get ourselves a staggering size. And I've really liked staggering size in Lost Caverns of Ixalan, and I think that it's gonna be even better in this archetype or in this set because this format feels like maybe there's gonna be a little bit less tempo with the ward 2 creatures. And so being able to give yourself an instant speed +3/+3 while you're protected by ward is pretty appealing. So I'm gonna give this one a B. I think this is going to be one of those commons like staggering size that I want to pick up and hopefully other people are undervaluing. Flourishing Bloomkin. Got ourselves a 0/0 plant elemental for 1 and a green at uncommon. When it gets +1/+1 for each forest that you control, and it has disguise 4 and a green. When Flourishing Bloomkin is turned face up, search your library for up to 2 forest cards and reveal them. Put one of them onto the battlefield tapped and the other into your hand, then shuffle. Well, I don't think that the set is going to be like Cons of Tarkir where you're getting up to like 10 mana, but maybe it is. I think it's kind of expensive for you know, you play it out as a 2/2 ward 2 and then on turn 5 you're flipping it up and you're probably not mono green. All right, I'll give this one a D. If you're mono green, then this goes up in value. Get a leg up. Got instant for 1 green until end of turn. Target creature gets +1/+1 for each creature you control and gains reach. Sure. Okay. I think there's definitely feeling like there's going to be a go wide strategy, and maybe it's in Celestia. Usually is in Celestia, and so giving something +1/+1 at instant speed is great offensively, and then also gains reach. So you can use it defensively to snipe a flyer. I like it. I'll give it a B. It's a 1 cost, you know, combat trick. I like the 1 cost combat tricks too, maybe a little bit more than I should. Glint Weaver, you get a 3/3 spider at uncommon for 5 double pip green with reach. 3/3 reach. When it enters the battlefield, distribute 3 +1/+1 counters among 1, 2, or 3 target creatures. Then you gain life equal to the greatest toughness among creatures you control. Oh wow! Wait, there's a combo here. Okay, yeah, I think it was in white that has the 110, right? It has the 110 with disguise. So you could gain 10 HP. You could gain 10 off of this. The downside is that it's a 7 cost card, but it's enough to be like there's an interesting booties matter kind of vibe going on. Also has reach, so I'm thinking maybe the counter deck it has reach so that you don't just get tempoed out while you're kind of doing this mid range like overpower your opponent with throwing +1/+1 counters. A 6/6 reach though, just by its I mean a 6/6 reach just by itself too for 7 is like okay. I'll give this one a C. I don't think, you know, it might be too high because of a 7 cost. Like 7 costs really have to be doing something, and this might be too much for that. But a 6/6 reach creature that gains you 6 life is a pretty good 7-drop. All right, Greenbelt Radical. We get ourselves a 4/4 uncommon Centaur Citizen for 3 and a green. And it has Disguise 5, double pip green. So there's another one for you, Herbivore. Would you rather be playing its normal cost? When Greenbelt Radical is turned face up, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Creatures you control gain trample until end of turn. Wow, it's got a win. That's a win condition right there, right? So better in Celestia, but if you're not in Celestia, you get to turn it into a 5/5 trample that gives all of your other creatures +1/+1 and trample. Yeah. And like in red, where you can flip this up for free. Interesting. Okay, so green red is kind of doing the skies thing. I think the hardest so far, because like so far with the only enabler we've seen for disguise and the expensive disguise stuff is the expose, the culprit kind of thing. So I like this if you can get through the disguise. So I'm gonna give this a C. I think it's enough of a win condition that like even without being able to cheaply do it, like I think there's gonna be games where you flip this up for 7 and just win. So not like for sure though. Hard hitting question. We get a sorcery at uncommon for 1 green. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature or planeswalker you don't control. Really? Okay, so we've got ourselves a bite spell at 1 green at sorcery speed at uncommon. And it hits planeswalkers. I'm gonna give it a C, because still if that creature dies, you get 2 for 1. It's not that big of a deal if you get 2 for 1 with a 1 cost spell though. But I don't think it's like top tier removal. Edge Whisperer, we get ourselves a 0/3 Elf Druid Detective for 1 green. 0/3. When you may choose not to untap Hedge Whisperer during your untap step. Okay. 3 and a green, tap it, collect evidence 4. Target land you control becomes a 5/5 plant boar creature with haste for as long as Hedge Whisperer remains tapped. It's still a land, activate only as a sorcery. Okay, so like I think there's a tokens deck theme going. So like collect evidence and then different types of a plant board. I think there's like a plant tokens sub theme. I don't like this though. Collect evidence 4 to get a 5/5, and then like they just have to kill the 0/3. Hey, what's up, Jets Dad? All right, I'm gonna give this one a D. I don't think I'm gonna play this in a lot of decks. The 0/3 does block the 2/2s in the format though, so maybe if you're interested in just playing a 0/3 that then can become a 5/5 later, maybe I'm undervaluing it. Maybe D is a little bit too rough. If you didn't have to collect evidence 4 to turn it into a 5/5, I'd like it a lot more. But I think you're going to want to be doing other stuff with your collect evidence. So I'm going to pass on Hedge Whisper. All right, we got Hide in Plain Sight, which is a rare sorcery for 3 and a green. Look at the top 5 cards of your library, cloak 2 of them, and put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Ooh, okay. So the cloak allows you to disguise cards that don't normally have disguise, and then you can flip them face up for the mana cost of the creature. So this is kind of like, look at the top 5 cards of your library, put 2 into the battlefield. This automatically is 2 creatures. I like this a lot. And there's some cards, there's some disguised creatures that want to be cloaked instead of being disguised. So, and if you don't hit any creatures, you can just like cloak lands, and there's still 2/2 creatures with ward 2, which 2/2 creatures with ward 2 I would pay 4 for. I'm giving this an A. It's a single pip in green. It's it's a 4 cost single pip, so you could splash this into a fair amount of decks at relatively low cost, and I think you could do some really silly stuff with this. Maybe it's a little bit too high, but I'm going to give this one an A. A Killer Among Us is a uncommon enchantment for 4 and a green. When a Killer Among Us enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 white human creature token, a 1/1 blue merfolk creature token, and a 1/1 red goblin creature token. Secretly choose human, merfolk, or goblin. and then you sacrifice the enchantment and reveal the chosen creature type. And if target attacking creature token is the chosen type, it has to be a token specifically, put 3+1/+1 counters on it, and it gains Death Touch until end of turn. Okay, so you are getting a 4/4, a 1/1, and a 1/1 for 5 mana. And your opponent has to kind of guess which one. They've got a 1 in 3 chance that you have the ability to turn it into a 4/4 Death Touch. So a lot of times you're just going to let those little 1/1s go through. And the question is whether or not you sacrifice the Killer Among Us to reveal who it is to get the 3+1/+1 counters and hit for more damage, or if you hold up the surprise. Kind of a fun, I like the design of this. A 4/4, a 1/1, and a 1/1 across. I mean, that's 6/6 worth of stats across 3 bodies. I'm gonna give that a B. I like that. Because the +1/+1 is permanent. So it is a little bit weird though, right? It's definitely different. Because like your opponent's gonna figure out which one is the one that you can make into a 4/4 by the way that you block. And then they can use it like instant speed removal to kill the 1/1 before it becomes a 4/4. So I might be overvaluing this, but I'm intrigued. Loxodon Eavesdropper is a 3/3 elephant detective for 3 and a green. So we've got ourselves a hill giant. When it enters the battlefield, investigate. And then whenever you draw your second card each turn, Loxodon Eavesdropper gets +1/+1 and gains vigilance until end of turn. Okay. So as long as you are constantly doing the clue thing and drawing your second card, then Loxodon is a 4/4 vigilance for 4. But it does need to be enabled. And it's a common. So it depends on how good you are at doing the draw 2. Let's say that you're not particularly good at it, then it's a hill giant. So the floor is that it's a hill giant that gives you a clue. Yeah. If you've got synergies that loot, though, if you like, it's kind of making me think of Simic, right? You can do instant speed draw, though, right? We saw like I think the 1 in a blue was an instant speed to draw a card and investigate. So you can threaten this becoming a 4/4, but it has to be tapped if you're going to do it at instant speed. All right, so I'm going to give this a D. It could come up if you are doing the draw 2 archetype. Nervous Gardener is a 2/2 Dryad for 1 and a green with Disguise 1 green. When Nervous Gardener is turned face up, search your library for a land card with a basic land type, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. Hell yeah. All right. So turn 3, Disguise, turn 4, reveal it, and mana fix. All right. I'll give that a C. I think that, you're going to want it more in the decks that are interested in fixing for their lands. But even then, the floor is just a 2/2 Grizzly Bear, and I'm okay. I'm okay with that stat block. Yeah, and the fact, as Pigpen is pointing out here, is it doesn't search for just a forest. It's a land card with a basic land type. So it doesn't hit a non-basic land, but it can get any color, which is excellent. Pick Your Poison is a sorcery at common for 1 green. You choose one of 3 effects. Each opponent sacrifices an artifact. Each opponent sacrifices an enchantment. And each opponent sacrifices a creature with flying. I like this. Okay, so we've seen the solved cases, right? Like this is kind of like better than the enchantment. Sorry, I don't have my notifications on, but I just got a subscription from Papa Moon. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Blue Kazoo, as is tradition. Hope you're having an excellent Friday. And so I like this one. The edict for a flyer is kind of interesting, and it only costs 1. And then if they have a single enchantment that's like a solved enchantment case study or whatever, then it's going to be really good to snipe that with. So I like this. It could play poorly, but this is one that I'm going to have to play first to really figure out if it's good or not. Because if your opponent has like 3 flyers or 3 enchantments and 3 artifacts, the edicts work worse the more there are that your opponent has. So I still think that you're going to be able to snipe something of interest relatively easily with this card. And like destroying a flyer for 1 green, that's pretty good. I think, I mean, like maybe your opponent doesn't have a flyer, right? But um, the floor on this, where the absolute worst it can be, is that like it kills a clue token for 1 green, which is pretty bad. But the ceiling's pretty high. So I'm going to give this one a C. And maybe bump it up to a B if it turns out to just be a really cheap way to like destroy your opponent's busted solved cases. Pompous Gadabout is a 4/2 human citizen for 2 and a green. Pompous Gadabout has hexproof as long as it's your turn. And then Pompous Gadabout can't be blocked by creatures that don't have a name. Don't all creatures have a name? I love the flavor of it. So basically what this is saying is that it can't be blocked by tokens. Ah, face down cards are disguised, right. Okay, face down cards and tokens can't block it. Well, maybe the tokens have a name. No, I don't think they do. Which is good because like the things that are going to be blocking early as 2/2s are going to be your disguised creatures, right? So 4/2 that you can then buff up into a 7/5 trampler with the staggering size and potentially can't be blocked by your opponent's turn 3 play. Depends on how many grizzly bears. We didn't notice a lot of grizzly bears in blue, but we did in white. And so if you're up against white-green, then this is going to be a little bit easier to block. But if you're up against some of the blue archetypes, then they're going to have a harder time blocking this. I'll give this a C. I think the 4/2 for 3 is like okay. If you're playing it defensively, you can, it trades up relatively well. Question is, how easily is it going to be blocked? So I think it's enough that I'll like check it out. The Pride of Whole Clade is a 2/15, 10 colorless and a forest. The spell costs X less to cast, where X is the total toughness of creatures you control. Okay, so there's like a toughness sub theme that's also happening in, I believe, green white, because green white had the 110 disguised 2 and a white, I believe, and then it has defender. Until end of turn, target creature you control gets +1/+0 gains whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player. Draw cards equal to its toughness and can attack as though it didn't have defender. All right, there's a big butt Simic deck, huh? Or no, big butt Celestia deck. But the ability to turn it on is blue. So Bant? Is there a Bant Butts deck? I think there might be a Bant Booty deck. Oh man, so if the 3/15 gets through, then you draw 15 cards? Wow, man. It should give itself unblockable. That's funny. All right, well, maybe I'm mistakenly remembering the 110 creature and it's actually in blue, not white. I'll have to go back and look at that, if this is a Simic kind of theme or if this is a Bant theme. Yeah, and better with small flyers just getting in. But I mean, 4 to draw 2 or something like that is kind of expensive. And like you need to enable this off of having a big booty in the first place. So I like where they're going with this, but like they kind of missed the mark a little bit for me, unless this is like heavily what the Simic theme is doing. I'll give this one a D because I think you're looking at kind of a meme. All right, we've got Rope, which is the clue equipment for green. You get 1 green. Equipped creature gets +1/+2 and has reach. Can't be blocked by more than 1 creature. Dang it, I was like, hey, that one's actually worth an equip cost of 2. And they made it equip cost 3. And then as all the clue equipment, you can tap 2 and sacrifice it to draw a card. Dang it, I want the equip cost to be 2 on there. All right, well, I still think that the equipment is too expensive. This one's not changing my opinion on that. I'm giving this one a D. Rubble Belt Maverick. You get a 1/1 human detective for 1 green. Rubble Belt Maverick enters the battlefield Surveil 2. Okay, so it's, self-mill, but with a little bit more selection. And You can tap green and exile it from your graveyard to put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. Activate only as a sorcery. So it's a good thing if you mill it. It's fine if you're like self mill. And so we've seen 2 enablers for the self mill in green. We've got the 2-drop that mills 3, and then we've got this which surveils, both at common, I believe. So that is a lot of eyeballs on that cat, 100%. And I don't know, it's an enabler. I think it's fine. And like it's fine if you flip it up into your graveyard too, right? So I'm giving this one a C. Sample Collector, we've got a 2/3 for 2 and a green. Whenever Sample Collector attacks, you may collect evidence 3. When you do, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Is that really what you want to be doing with your evidence? Is making it into a +1/+1 counter? I don't know. So if you have something that like synergizes off of like whenever a creature leaves your graveyard kind of thing that we've seen in Golgari, um, then this is a way to get those creatures out and trigger that as well. But without additional synergies, I'm not really sure I like a 2/3 for 3 that needs to collect evidence. So I'm gonna give this one a D. I think that you want to be like in a specific archetype that cares about, yeah, once again, Pigpen, a secret gold card. Yeah, yeah. Simic and Golgari, probably. Sultai. The Sultai space is it's probably a Sultai card. But even if you can do it once, you get a 4 for 3, which is okay. I just once again, do you want to like what are you spending your evidence on? Because I think it is a limited resource. We haven't seen a whole lot of self mill either. We've seen a lot more looting. Vigilance, whenever sorry, vigilance, wow. So we've got Sharp-Eyed Rookie, which is a 2/2 human detective at rare for 1 and a green. Vigilance, whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, if its power is greater than Sharp-Eyed Rookie's power or its toughness is greater than Sharp-Eyed Rookie's toughness, put a +1/+1 counter on Sharp-Eyed Rookie and investigate. Okay, so it scales. Hopefully you're continuing to scale this. This does not work well with disguised creatures, though, right? Because you play this on 2, and then on turn 3, you play a 2/2, it doesn't trigger this. So this works better if you're not doing the disguised creatures. But a vigilance that scales as long as you're continuing to play on curve with your power and toughness and gives you free tokens, that's great. I'll give this one a B. Slime Against Humanity. All right, we've got ourselves a common sorcery for 2 and a green. Create a 0/0 green ooze creature token with trample. Put X +1/+1 counters on it, where X is 2 plus the total number of cards you own in exile and in your graveyard that are oozes or are named Slime Against Humanity. A deck can have any number of cards named Slime Against Humanity. Well, I don't think we've seen other oozes. So it's a 2/2 for 3 at sorcery speed that then becomes bigger if you're continuing to play more slimes. Yeah, this doesn't seem very good unless I'm missing an ooze sub theme somewhere. Welcome, K-Mac, K-Mackie. Welcome. Hope you're having a good Friday. I'm gonna give this one a D. Maybe it's unplayable. Right? It could be that bad that this is just like an F. But yeah, maybe for constructed, there are ooze decks, right? So we get ourselves a common. They Went This Way, which is a common sorcery at 2 and a green. Search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle, and you get an investigate. All right, this is okay if you want fixing, right? If you're playing multiple colors, this is the sort of thing that enables you to be able to do that. 3 cost is, I kind of want this to be 2, but you're getting the investigate, so we're kind of continuing to see the theme that the clue tokens kind of cost 1 colorless to create. And so I'm gonna go with this one being a C, but that's assuming that you are looking for splashing colors. Topiary Panther is a common plant cat, a 6/5 trampler for 4 double pip green that comes with basic land cycling. All right. 1 and a green, discard this card, search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. Yeah, I like this sort of card. I think that it's a really great way to enable your evidence. I was wondering if we were going to see a land cycler. So the fact that we've got this at common, you can cycle this and then collect evidence for 6. And not only that, but it also helps you fix if you're playing more than 2 colors. So far it looks like a lot of the fixing is in green. And I will be doing a full review of all of the sets mechanics, as well as my top commons and the archetypes, and how easy is it to splash, what are the fixers and everything. That will be available later tonight on YouTube. So look for that one coming down the line, right? Hopefully, I'm aiming to get it done by midnight tonight. So part of this is I've got to finish this up and then do that. So anyway, I like this. I think this is great. I think that it goes into a lot of archetypes. I'm going to give this a B. I think this is one of the commons that like I'm excited about. Notably, they did make the land cycling one and a green, so can't just splash this. But it's not looking for a forest; it's looking for any color. So I think this is a good way to splash, though. This is not a cycle that we're seeing with other abilities. It is a land cycle, though, but it's not something that we've seen in every color. Tunnel Tipster, which is unusually dark. But anyway, we've got a 1/1 Mole Scout at common for 1 and a green. At the beginning of your instep, if a face-down creature entered the battlefield under your control this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Tunnel Tipster. And it is a mana dork and can tap for 1 green. Yeah, okay, so this is secretly a red-green card, I think. I think that's the archetype that's doing the face-down creatures, at least because of the red card that can make the face-down creatures flip for free at common, I think. And so as long as you're doing the disguise theme in red-green, I think that's kind of... So red is the villain, is what I'm getting. Like, red is the one that has all of the suspects. It has the disguised creatures that are all like suspicious. And yeah, this looks like I'll give this one a B. I like, the mana dork tends to be pretty good. This one doesn't necessarily scale to the late game like the frog did and like some other mana dorks we've seen in the past. But if you're doing the disguise thing, this can grow into a reasonable threat. Hey, so at Christmas, I hope you're having a good Friday. Undergrowth Recon. We've got 1 and a double pip green for a mythic enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, return target land card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Beginning of your upkeep. All right, so if you have a lot of self-mill, then you can use this to ramp. I think this is a constructed card. Not really what I'm looking to do. If I'm looting, yes, you can discard lands and then put those lands into the battlefield and it can ramp you. But it's not really what I like to do. So I'm gonna give you I'm gonna give this one an F. And this is also one that like I don't want to play it later in the game on like turn 7. Just because like the best part about this is that it's going to be is ramping you, right? And then like a turn 3 do nothing, like you really have to have the ramp payoff, right? So this is a constructed card for sure. Vengeful Creeper, we've got a 5/5, or we've got a plant elemental 5/5 at common for 4 and a green with disguise 5 and a green. So we're seeing this kind of like some disguise cards are cheaper than their casting costs, some are more expensive. So it's not really one way or the other. When Vengeful Creeper is turned face up, destroy target artifact or enchantment an opponent controls. All right, there's definitely enough clues and enough cases that I think this is going to be a relevant effect. And I will give this a C. I think this is, yeah, I think that's fine. Tap 6 to deal 5 damage when it's unblocked, and then you destroy one of their solved cases or one of their artifacts. And like a 5/5 for 5 is okay. It's not something that like I hate. I don't hate that stat block. Ganj, what's up? You're saying 9 mana to blow up an artifact? Yeah, it's expensive, but a lot of the stuff in this set is expensive. And being able to like, for 6, being able to, there's a lot of stuff for 6 that flips into like a 6/5 or a 5/5. So it's kind of on par with that. And I've given a lot of the disguised creatures a D. I think this one's going to be higher because of the enchantments being something that you want to get rid of. And so far, the only thing that we've seen that destroys enchantments and artifacts directly is a triple pip green rare card, and then an edict for 1 green. So there's not a lot of enchantment and not a lot of artifact hate in general, which is why I'm bumping this one up to C. I do believe that this is looking like a go large set as opposed to a go small set. So that's why, like, I don't think the Mind Rot's going to work very well, the discard in general, because you have a whole bunch of clue tokens that are going to create card draw, and then the disguise mechanic is going to be very mana intensive and kind of slow. So we'll see if there's a tempo deck that kind of comes out of the woodwork, because like there does appear to be one with the suspect giving you menace and not being able to block. I think there's one that's like, there is a very offensive strategy, and then we have the brackish blunder and unlucky drop repeat in blue, except for now the unlucky drop is double pip blue and can hit spells. So I do think there's a tempo deck maybe in blue. Honestly, a lot of this is really hard to say without playing the set, but just from my first impressions is that it does look like it's going to be a slower go large set. Could I be wrong? Yeah. Vito Ghazi Inspector is a common elf detective for 1 and a green. You get a 1/3. As an additional cost to cast the spell, you may collect evidence 6. Notably, a lot of the, there's not a lot of self-mill, but there is loot as a way to self-mill or to get stuff into the graveyard. So that'll be interesting. I haven't really seen a lot of stuff that's like mill your opponent. So that's another one to kind of, we'll see how this one plays out. So that we get a 1/3 reach. It's interesting. And then when it enters the battlefield, if evidence was collected, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature and you gain 2 life. How good is a 2/4 reach? That is 100% a squirrel on their shoulder. And not only that, but it's like the squirrel is shining a purple flashlight. It's like the squirrel is like holding, like is highlighting something on the tree, right? It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. Okay, so how good is a 2/4 reach? That's going to be a question we're going to have to look at, like what's the stats. I do remember a blue Wind Drake. I do remember a 4/2 Vigilance Lifelink 4/2 rare in white. So a 2/4 might be useful and might actually be worth the collect evidence 6. Are you going to be able to collect evidence 6 on 2? Probably not. And then are there any 1/1 flyers? I think there was. There was a 1/1 flying lifelink that becomes a 2/2 if you've like sacrificed a artifact or something. Then this wouldn't block again. But it blocks all of the disguised 2/2 creatures. That's hard to say whether or not it's going to be a D or a C. I'll give it a C because it has reach and can become a 2/4. It's enough to... It's close. It's close. But yeah, if you do the land cycle and then on turn 3 you could play it out as a 2/4 reach. That would be pretty defensive. That would be able to block your opponent's disguised creatures. It would be able to block a lot of the stuff in the air that we've seen. So that might be the play, is to do the land cycler and then play this on 3. And maybe, use the other 1 green mana for something. I don't know. That one, then we're gonna have to play test that one. So we made it to the multicolored cards. I'm gonna take a quick little break because talking for 2 hours straight is very taxing on the vocal cords. So I'm gonna go grab some water, use the bathroom, do a little stretching, and then we'll cover the last and my favorite segment of the whole shebang, the multicolored cards. What are the archetypes doing specifically? And then we'll finish it up with the artifacts and the lands. So I'll be right back. All right, sweet. We're right about 2 hour mark, which is right on time. Each segment takes about an hour to do. So multicolored, here we go. We got Agris Kos, Spirit of Justice, which is a mythic legendary spirit detective for 2, a red and a white. 2/4 double strike vigilance. When Argus Kos, Spirit of Justice, enters the battlefield or attacks, choose up to 1 target creature. If it's suspected, exile it. Otherwise, suspect it. Excuse me. So, yeah, this is good. So You can choose your own stuff to make it harder to block and give your stuff menace if you're the beatdown. You can use it as removal and make your opponents suspected so that they can't block, and then you can use it to exile problematic things. So this seems like a very good card. It is a gold card, and rightly so. It's a mythic gold card. I'll give this one a B. Happy to pack it up, open it up, pack one, pick one. Does it do enough to just win you the game to be like an A? I don't think so. It's, you know, it does, when it enters the battlefield, it does remove a blocker the turn it comes down, and then double strike vigilance as a 2/4 like is a pretty good stat block for a 4-cost card. If this exiled every time that it entered the battlefield or attacked, it would just be absolutely bonkers. So if you're up against the other suspect deck, though, and then you can use this as an exile, like, it can absolutely destroy that strategy, right? So I think B is a pretty good spot to put it. And thank you there, JLope MTG, for the follow. I don't have my notifications on today, but I do appreciate it. Hope you're having a wonderful Friday. And let's continue this set review. Alquist Proft, Master Sleuth, is a legendary human detective 3/3 with vigilance for 1, a white, and a blue. When Alquist Proft, Master Sleuth, enters the battlefield, investigate, and then you have tap X, a white and double blue, and tap it, sacrifice a clue, you draw X cards and gain X life. Oh, buddy. That's interesting. So 3/3 vigilance, again, decent stat. Creates the clue token, and then makes all of your other clue tokens draw X and gain X life for 1 more mana. Because like a clue token already takes 2 to do, right? So if you pay 1 more mana and then X, you get to draw additional cards and then gain X life. Yeah. Especially in a set that cares about detectives in blue-white. It's on theme, right? Similarly, like this one's also on theme. I think the Boros is trying to do. I think Boros is trying to do suspects. So we'll see. But this one, you know, like it's a detective, which is definitely what white blue is trying to do. And then it creates a clue token, which is great, and it makes your future clue tokens better. So detective and clue tokens. Yeah. So B, solid, great. Ansrag, the Quake Mole. Nice. Get yourself a legendary mole god. And you get yourself an 8/4 for 2 and a red and a green. Whenever Ansrag, the Quake Mole, becomes blocked, untap each creature you control. After this combat phase, there is an additional combat phase. And then you can tap 3 double pip red, double pip green. Ansrag must be blocked each combat this turn if able. So I've seen this one with I've seen some hype around this card, right? Like on on X. This is interesting, right? Because it doesn't have a double pip. It is 4 costs, so like splashing this isn't impossible, right? Same with this card. Like if the deck, it kind of feels like maybe splashing busted gold cards is going to be a thing. So I do think they're going to be able to, you can kind of shove them into other decks if you open them up in like pack 3, pick 1. It doesn't need to be in Golgari. This one kind of does because of the activated ability, but an 8/4, that needs to be blocked. And then if you hit this with a staggering size, you have an 11/7 trampler, and you get to attack again after it's survived. If you make it indestructible, it's insane. The ability doesn't make it indestructible though. Yeah, there's a staggering size. It's called something else in this set. Lost in the Caves, yeah. Anyway, if you give this +3/+3 and trample, chat, then this is an 11/7 that triggers an additional combat phase after you do your combat trick, right? So I think this is I think this is pretty good. We haven't seen like a whole lot. We saw like deal X to target creature for 1 and a red if you sacrificed a creature, sacrificed an artifact in red. Um, but like it doesn't get killed by some of the other stuff. So 4 cost for an 8/4 just feels really good. And late game being able to this like being forcing this so that you get an additional combat phase seems pretty good. Sims, you're saying if you can turn it indestructible and use the ability, you just wreck their whole board? Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, if you give it indestructible, I'm not really sure how you give it indestructible, but yeah, I guess that in theory works pretty well. It's like, so it has to be blocked. If it doesn't die and then you attack again, it still has to be blocked, right? Because it has to be blocked each combat. So if there's multiple combats, it still has to be blocked again. But it only has to be blocked by one creature. It only has to be chump blocked, which is why I really want to give this thing trample. Anyway, we've spent enough time on this card. I think it is splashable as a 4 cost. I think that it's probably good enough to splash and pairs particularly nicely with the +3/+3 and trample. So I'm gonna go with a B. And Sims, you're definitely pointing out a good point, which is if you attack with this and it's indestructible, they have to block it. And then since it got blocked, there's another combat phase. They have to block it again. So then you can attack with this and just snipe off every single one of their things, as long as it doesn't die. So you get to clear their board for 7, which is pretty fantastic. So I'm tempted to give this one an A, but it's not it doesn't do enough on ETB for me to really justify giving it an A. So I will give it a B. Assassins we got a 12 mana combo to make Anzarag into indestructible. Go team go. All right, Assassin's Trophy. We have a green or black and a green for a rare instant. Destroy target permanent and opponent controls. Its controller may search their library for a basic land card and put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. This is kind of what I was talking about, right? You play your Anzarag, and they play Assassin's Trophy. The fact that the Quake Mole doesn't doesn't do something immediately onto ETB is the problem. But okay, so we've got good removal, but the problem is that it ramps your opponent, and it does not come into the play tapped. It just turns something into a land. It's any permanent though, so you can even destroy a non-basic land and have it turn into a basic land card. You've really got a problematic man land or something like that and constructed. I mean, that's good. Instant speed removal. Yeah, I'll give it a B. Most of the gold cards are going to be Bs just by design. So, Aurelia, the Law Above, is a 4/4 legendary angel for 3, a red, and a white. Flying, Vigilance, and Haste. Whenever a player attacks with 3 or more creatures, you draw a card. And then whenever a player attacks with 5 or more creatures, Aurelia, the Law Above, deals 3 damage to each of your opponents, and you gain 3 life. Okay. Nice. Okay, Flying, Vigilance, Haste for 5. Get down with that. You attack with 3 or more creatures, you draw a card. I think Boros is trying to do this like go wide suspect thing. And then if you attack with 5 or more creatures, you Lightning Helix your opponent. Oh man, that's almost an A. It has haste. Oh, it's anyone too. Good point. Whenever a player, not even just you. I'm gonna give this one an A. Let's go for it. This seems great. Yeah. And like splashable. 5 cost, no double pips. Let's go. Blood Spatter Analysis. We got a black and a red for a rare enchantment. Blood Spatter Analysis enters the battlefield. It deals 3 damage to target creature and opponent controls. Whenever 1 or more creatures die, mill a card and put a Bloodstain counter on Blood Spatter Analysis. Then sacrifice if it has 5 or more Bloodstain counters on it. When you do, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. All right, Dexter. Got some Dexter vibes. I mean, a black and a red to deal 3 damage is kind of eh. You know, it's okay, but it's not amazing. It does give you some much needed self mill, which there's just like not a lot of that in this set. But then being able to later sacrifice it to return a creature from your graveyard to your hand Doesn't even return it from the graveyard to play? I wish this was from graveyard to play. Yeah, I'm gonna give this one a C. I'm not super stoked about this. I would put it into a deck if I saw it late in Rakdos and I was already in black-red. Yeah, I mean, it's okay, but like I really want this to put the creature card from your graveyard into play. Because you have to kill 5 things for it to like activate. Other than that, it's like a 3 damage. It's a strangle, but it costs a black as well. I don't know. Maybe I'm misreading something about this, but I'm not super impressed by the blood spatter analysis. Breakout is a sorcery uncommon for a red and a green. Look at the top 6 cards of your library, and you may reveal a creature card from among them. If that card has a mana value 2 or less, you may put it onto the battlefield, and it gains haste until end of turn. If you didn't put the revealed card onto the battlefield this way, put it into your hand, put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. All right, so I mean, top 6 cards is decent dig. Top 6 for a creature card. I don't know. I'm going with this one. I'm not super stoked about this. So it is uncommon, and you can give a 2-drop haste. So like if you have a really good 2-drop, then maybe this is okay. If you have a busted 2-drop, otherwise I'm not really stoked about it. It does help you find like it kind of helps you tutor to a busted bomb, but I'm gonna give this one a D. I'm not super stoked about this one. So Buried in the Garden, we've got 2 green and a white for an uncommon enchantment aura. Enchant land. When Buried in the Garden enters the battlefield, exile target non-land permanent you don't control until Buried in the Garden leaves the battlefield. Okay, so we've kind of got like an ossification. When enchanted land is tapped for mana, its controller adds an additional 1 mana of any color. Okay, ossification that's doesn't have to be enchanting a basic land and is a mana fixer. Slightly overstated, eh? Or slightly overcosted. Because it kind of like if you play this, it's kind of like playing it for 3. You can't do it until turn 4 with the ward and everything in the set. I'm gonna give this one a D. I'm not sure how much Celestia is trying to play with other colors of the wind either. If it turns out that green-white really wants another color, then maybe I come back and go up on this. Like, you're probably, splashing for black and playing this as like an attrition that helps you ramp? Like, was that? Not Mardu. Abzan, do like an Abzan space. Coerced to kill, got 3, a blue and a black, enchant creature. You control enchanted creature, but the enchanted creature has base power and toughness 1/1, has death touch, and is an assassin in addition to its other types. Dang it, I was excited when you you got a 5 cost, you control enchanted creature. Uncommon, 3, a blue and a black. I wanted this to be so just end there, right? It's a shame Celestia hasn't been good since Capenna. Celestia was great in Lord of the Rings. You should do the multicolored, like, legendary deck, be base Celestia, play a bunch of hobbits. It was one of my favorite archetypes. But yeah, I mean, Celestia has been kind of struggling. Anyway, welcome. I hope you're having a good Friday, Nico. Coerced to kill, turning your thing into a 1/1 is kind of odd. Yeah, I liked green white in LCI. I didn't do terribly well in it, but I liked it in theory. Staggering size on flyers and big dinos. But back to this. Coerced to kill. I don't like this. It's removal and you get a 1/1 for 5? It's expensive. You get something that's really good. Maybe. It's too easy to kill for a 1/1. Well, that's the point, is that you're playing removal that then is a secondary thing of removal. So I play this on your best creature. I get a 1/1 that has death touch that I then use to block your second best creature. So it's a 2 for 1. Or you have to use removal to get rid of my 1/1 death touch. And then that's also a 2 for 1. So I mean, like, a 2 for 1 is okay. It's just really expensive for what it's doing. And then if they destroy your enchantment, they get your creature back, and you're sad that you just spent 5 mana on that. So I'm gonna go with the D, especially because of ward. The ward, like a disguised creature, you'd have to pay 7 for this sort of thing. I don't know, might be undervaluing this, but I'm gonna go with a D. DLK, you really like the art. It is really nice art. Give you that. Crowd Control Warden is a 4/4 common Centaur soldier for 3, a green and a white. As Crowd Control Warden enters the battlefield or is turned face up, put X +1/+1 counters on it, where X is the number of other creatures you control. Well, hell yeah. All right. It's got split, disguised, 3, and then either green, white, or green, white. Do it either way. A little bit easier to splash if you do it. A little bit easier if you're like, that's kind of interesting. It's X plus X. I mean, honestly, even if this just hits 1, even if this hits 1, you get a 5/5. It's not amazing though, right? I mean, like, I'll give it a C. I think it's not amazing, but it could be a really big threat if you're doing the kind of like go wide strategy, and then a way to convert it into going tall. I'm not sure is advantageous at the moment, but it's all right. Curious Cadaver. We got a 3/1 zombie detective at uncommon for a 2, a blue, and a black with flying. When you sacrifice a clue, return Curious Cadaver from your graveyard to your hand. Okay. So Demir is about sacrificing clues. That's the signpost uncommon, right? We've seen recurring threats be pretty decent, especially as flyers. So yeah, if you have a 2/4, that 2/4 reach kind of shuts down this card, right? But I haven't seen a whole lot of 4 toughness flyers or reach cards yet. I've seen a 4/4 reach though, and a 2/4 reach or a 1/3 reach. Yeah, I'll give this a B. Like I think this is doing okay. I think there's enough clue in the format that this is going to be like acceptably, not difficult to turn on. Deadly Complication is a uncommon sorcery for 1, a black, and a red. Choose 1 or both, destroy target creature, or both, so you can put a +1/+1 counter on target suspected creature you control. You may have it become no longer suspected. You don't have to. I think Rakdos is going to have plenty of suspected creatures, so I think that's fine. And then you've got like Murder as sorcery speed instead of instant, which is also okay. Yeah, I'll give this a B. I don't think it's amazing, but like I think if you're in Rakdos, should be able to do the thing. Seems okay. Sorcery speed removal, maybe B is a little too high. Detective Satchel. We've got ourselves an uncommon artifact for 2, a blue, and a red. When it enters the battlefield, investigate twice. Okay, so it comes in with 2 clue tokens. Get 3 artifacts in 1. Tinker's Tote for 1 more mana. And then it can tap to create a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying. Activate only if you've sacrificed an artifact this turn. Huh. Okay, so we're seeing like a Grixis space, maybe? With artifact sacrifice? And then gives you 3 artifacts to sacrifice. I think this is more of a splash card than I think it is actually what I'm going to try to do in blue-red. Because what I'm going to try to do in blue-red is collect evidence and be a bunch of spells. So I'm not really sure that I'm going to be looking to sacrifice artifacts. I don't know. It feels kind of like this one's like, is this actually what blue-red is trying to do? I'm not sure. But 3 cards in 1 if you're doing this the artifact sacrifice thing. I'm gonna give this a B, but I'm gonna give this a B with an asterisk of like maybe this isn't what blue red is actually trying to do. We'll see. Dog Walker is a 3/1 common human citizen for a red and a white. Vigilance, Disguise for red and white split mana. And then when Dog Walker is turned face up, create 2 tapped 1/1 white dog creature tokens. All right, I like it. So you flip it up, you get a 3/1, you hit him for 3, it creates 2 1/1s, which I'm happy to do for 2 mana. And then the following turn, you get a 3/1 Vigilance, which should trade pretty well. And I think so. Like red white's trying to go wide, so I like this. Yeah, sure. I'll give this one a B. I think sometimes you're even just going to play it out as a 3/1 vigilance, and it depends on what your opponent's doing. Doppelgang, we got triple X, green blue. For each of X target permanents, create X tokens that are copies of that permanent. So to create one copy of something at sorcery speed, got to pay 5 mana. You can create 2 copies that I think can be the same target. But you have to pay 8 for that? Too expensive, man. Too expensive. I'm gonna give this one an F. Because like if they destroy your permanent that you're trying to target too, like you just absolutely fizzled everything, right? I think this is not really what I'm trying to do in limited. But maybe Simic is just trying to get like an incredible amount of lands. Drag the Canal is a instant rare for blue and a black. Create a 2/2 white and blue detective creature token. If a creature died this turn, you gain 2 life, surveil 2, and then investigate. Wow. Well, you definitely want one of your creatures to die then. That's a lot. And a 2/2 for 2 at instant speed, though, that's fine. That's okay. If a creature died this turn, you gain 2 life, surveil 2, and investigate, though. Yeah, I like that. All right, I'm gonna give that one a B. I'm down. Etrata, Deadly Fugitive. Hey, look, it's the card that I used. Etrata, Deadly Fugitive is a legendary vampire assassin for 1 a blue and a black, 1 for Death Touch. Face down creatures you control have tap 2 a blue and a black. Turn this creature face up. If you can't exile it, then you may cast the exiled card without paying its mana cost. And whenever an assassin you control deals combat damage to an opponent, cloak the top card of that player's library. So I like that. Okay. So it itself isn't cloaked or disguised. If it deals damage, which a 1/4 Death Touch is pretty good at attacking in and dealing 1 damage, you get to cloak the top card of your player's library, of your opponent's library. So you get a 2/2 ward 2 every time it connects. And then face down creatures you control can be flipped up. So if you can't play the cloaked card, you can flip it up for 2 a blue and a black instead of paying the off color mana cost that you can't afford. And you exile it and then play the exiled card so that it's yours, so it doesn't go back to your opponent. Because otherwise, when you flipped it, right, like, see, the reason why they're doing that is because of the cloaked ruling. Yeah, so then it becomes yours. So there's no accidentally going, like, not revealing a good card that then eventually goes back to your opponent. So I like that. I like that a lot. B. You're not going to splash it very well. It's a blue. It's a 1, a blue, and a black, and it's pretty much for the Dimir deck. But like, it's doing some cool stuff, and it's definitely got some Underworld vibes. I loved the art, which is why I chose it for this for my backdrop. Okay, we've got Evidence Examiner, which is a uncommon Merfolk Detective, a 2/2 for a green and a blue. At the beginning of your combat on your turn, you may collect evidence 4. When you collect evidence, investigate. Okay, so Simic is trying to do the collect evidence thing. We're using green self-mill and the loot from blue to get stuff into our graveyard. Potentially a land cycler, which makes it a good spot for splashing into an additional color. Potentially Sultai. And then every time that you collect evidence, creating a token that you can then sacrifice that triggers the blue-black thing. All right, I'm starting to feel it. I'm starting to get there. I think it is Sultai. Because, like, blue-black wants evidence tokens to sacrifice. Black-green wants things to be, like, put into their graveyard and then removed. And then green-blue just wants to be, like, collecting evidence. I'm not sure you're ever going to want to use this just to create a token, though. Well, maybe if it triggers something interesting. All right, it's enough. Like, it's a signpost. I'll give it a B. I don't think it's, like, inherently that strong, though. I don't know. Ezrim, Agency Chief. Got a 1 double pip white, double pip blue for a legendary Archon Detective, which is a 5/5 flyer. When Ezrim, Agency Thief, enters the battlefield, investigate twice. Okay, and then you can tap 1 and sacrifice an artifact. Ezrim gains your choice of Vigilance, Lifelink, or Hexproof until end of turn. Holy cow, Batman. Well, okay. Tap 1 and sacrifice an artifact, give it Lifelink or Hexproof. The only problem with this is the restrictive mana cost. This wants 10 sources of white and 10 sources of blue to be able to cast on turn 5. So you're not typically going to have 20 lands in your deck. So I guess you could get away with 9 white and 9 blue, and maybe you're running 18 lands in this format. But it's going to be restrictive to play this card. It's going to be tricky to play it. If you didn't have the restricted mana cost, this is definitely doing some cool stuff. So I'll give it a B just because of the restricted mana. Fairy Snoop. Got ourselves a common Fairy Detective, 1, a blue and a black, or a 1/4 flyer with Disguise, with 1 split mana, blue and black. Double pip, I should say. When Fairy Snoop is turned face up, look at the top 2 cards of your library, put 1 into your hand and the other into your graveyard. This is kind of what I was talking about with those 2/1s not being particularly good, because like you go to block a disguised creature and then it suddenly becomes a 1/4. I feel like there's a lot of that. But the green 4/2 would trade well with this, right? If they flipped it up suddenly. I think that green 4/2 with Hexproof could actually be okay. When this is, look at the top 2 cards, put 1 in your hand and the other into your graveyard. Yeah, well, we want to fill our graveyard in the blue-black space, right? In the Sultai space. So you like that these common gold cards can be played in either color, doesn't have to be both. Exactly. And I think that that's because there is actually a 3-color theme going on loosely in this set. There's some crossover. So like we've seen with like Jeskai and blue, white, red, there's some potential there. We've seen Sultai definitely seems like a potential space. So yeah, there's not a really great fixing, but I haven't gotten to the lands yet. But it does kind of feel like a mixture of Cons and Streets of New Capenna, right? Got a vibe. Got that. It's got a little bit of that going on. Gadget. Oh, did I give this a grade? I mean, it's a 3 mana draw card. 6 mana total, but the disguise thing is like we're already doing that. Yeah, I'll give it a B. It is a common though. Like if you're in Dimir, I think it's fine. Gadget Technician is a common Goblin Artificer for get a 3/2 for 2, a blue and a red. When it enters the battlefield or is turned face up, create a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying, and it has a disguise of double pip but split blue red. Notably, there's a lot of 3/2s in this set, and there is a shock. And your 2/2 wards, like when they block something else, like a lot of the things flip into either 1/4s or into 3/2s. So I think blocking with your ward creatures isn't going to be that bad. You're not going to get punished a whole lot of the time. Worst case is they just bounce off each other or they trade, which you were interested in doing anyway. So curious to see how that plays out. But you know, so you get a 4/3 across 2 stats for 4. It's acceptable. I'll give this one a B as well. I mean, common though, it's so interesting to see gold cards at common. I'm used to only seeing gold cards at uncommon. I might be valuing this too highly, but blue red at least seems like it has a flying artifact sub theme going on it with on top of the spells. So yeah, it's like 2 cards in one. It's always interesting. Maybe B's too high. Gleaming Gear Drake, we get a uncommon 1/1 artifact creature Drake for a blue and a red with flying. When it enters the battlefield, investigate, and whenever you sacrifice an artifact, put a +1/+1 counter on Gleaming Gear Drake. Okay, so we're seeing more of sacrifice an artifact in blue red with both the detective satchel as well as the signpost here, which is interesting because I didn't like going through blue red. I didn't really feel like that was the theme. I didn't really feel like that's what blue red was trying to do. I thought sacrificing artifacts was more of what like Dimir was doing. So maybe there's like a Grixis space that's like really artifact sacrifice heavy. I kind of felt like the blue-red was going to be cycling spells and doing a bit of a spell slinger, but then we didn't really see a whole lot of payoff for those for cycling spells other than collecting evidence. Oh, okay. So there's like a Sultai space and a Teamer space. So like you're doing the blue-green collect evidence, which is fueled off of the blue-red spells, perhaps. Something to think about. Anyway, a 1/1 flyer that enters the battlefield creates it investigates 2 cards in 1. Whenever you sacrifice an artifact, put a +1/+1 counter on the Gleaming Gear Drake, makes it into a 2/2 after you've drawn a card. This is kind of like a 2/2 flyer draw card for 4. A little expensive, but not terrible. And then if you're continuing to sacrifice additional artifacts, it continues to grow. I'll give that a B. I think that could be a good place to go. And then we've got Granite Witness. I mean, one thing I'd like to note on before moving on here is so we just came out of Lost Caverns of Ixalan that had a lot of cards that create multiple rectangles, and so this creates 2 cards. I think that this creating 2 cards is going to be significantly worse in this set than it is in the Lost Caverns of Ixalan, because the Lost Caverns of Ixalan was very tempo oriented and very like go small with snails, where like the smaller the game is, then the better your incremental value is going to be off of, like, this creating an additional rectangle is going to be better the smaller the game is going to be. I think that this format is going to go in the opposite direction and make the game be more of like a go big, and so the little incremental value that you're getting off of the tokens is not going to be as important. But I do think there's going to be some synergies with the clue tokens and whatnot, and this is part of that, right? 3 Omega, thank you for the raid. I have my notifications turned off because I'm doing my set review. But thank you so much for the raid. Greetings, raiders. We're getting close here to the end of the set review. We're into the gold cards, and this will all be available later on my YouTube if you want to check that out. My pre-release guide will be up later tonight, and then the full walkthrough of part 1 and part 2 of the set review will be available over the weekend. So, hey, what's up, Chronic? How you doing? All right, let's let the rambling continue. I think I'll give this one a B. I generally give the signpost on commons Bs. Just be done with it. Granite Witness, unless something is just awful, right? Something like looks like a complete whiff. Granite Witness is a 3/2 flying vigilance artifact creature, gargoyle detective for 2, a white and a blue, with disguise, double pip, split blue-white mana. So when Granite Witness is turned face up, you may tap or untap target creature. This is less exciting because the other... Excuse me. Whoa. I just lost my voice, which works really poorly for a set review. So Granite Witness, 3/2 flyer, vigilance for 4, and you can disguise it for double split mana. The tap or untap creature is a little bit less important, what I was trying to say, because if your opponent has a bunch of disguised stuff, you will still have to pay the ward to tap their creature. But we've seen this kind of like with the other blue cards where you've got a 2-cost disguise and then pay for the ward to bounce something or to tap it. So, it works in that, and it's also a detective, which is the theme of what Azorius or White Blue is trying to do. So, I like this. I like where, I think this is okay. I think I'm going to give this one a B. I'm giving a lot of the common gold cards Bs, which might be wrong, but I kind of feel like you're going to want to look towards the gold cards. They've seemed pretty good. All right, we've next up, we've got Ill-Timed Explosion, which is a rare sorcery for 2, a blue and a black, and a blue and a red. And this one was called Lens Flare in my mind before it got its full name. But so we've got a rare sorcery, draw 2 cards, then you may discard 2 cards. When you do, Ill-Timed Explosion deals X damage to each creature, where X is the greatest mana value among cards discarded this way. Yeah, so we get a Wrath in blue-red, and you want to discard stuff for collecting evidence that's got like a big thing on it. Okay, so we've seen 3 Wraths. We've got a Wrath in white, we've got a Wrath in black, and we've got a Wrath in blue-red. So the only color that doesn't get a wrath is green. That's crazy. All right, so 3. Wow. Okay, 3 wraths. Well, I'll give this one a B. And this one also draws you a card. Very, very good point, Jorbles. Although you don't have to discard the 2 cards too, right? You may discard 2 cards. So if you already have, like, if you want to just draw 2 for 4, you can. You do need to discard something big, and it can be from your hand. It doesn't have to be 2 cards that you drew. So yeah, this seems like a great wrath. All right, next up we've got Insidious Roots, which is a uncommon enchantment for a black and a green. Creature tokens you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color. Oh, is Golgari the one doing the plant tokens? Whenever 1 or more creature cards leave your graveyard, create a 0/1 green plant creature token, put a +1/+1 counter on each plant you control. Golgari plants? Question mark? Huh, okay. So yeah, creature cards leaving your graveyard, either through collecting evidence or through reanimation, creates a 0/1, and then you put a +1/+1 counter on each plant you control. But more importantly, your tokens ramp you. Alright, I don't really like what this one's doing. I don't like this one too much, right? Just because, like, I'll have to go back and pay attention to how easy it is to actually create the creature tokens and in what colors. Because it wasn't really standing out to me that black or green was particularly good at making tokens. Maybe green more so than black, but yeah, I'm gonna give this one a D. I don't really think this is what I want, just because like it takes a while for you to get your creature cards out of your graveyard, and then when you do, like you could overwhelm them with plants. But maybe this is not great. God, join your pack one picking in this. Hell yeah. Yeah, and then like also your creatures don't just get to tap for mana, it's only your tokens. So I don't know. It's a build around. D is situational, right? You could definitely make it work, and I'm happy for Ganj to pack one, pick one it, and go for it. Also, I'm gonna go back and see how many plants there are. Because like we saw some other plant stuff, right? So maybe you could actually do like a Golgari plant deck. Zani, Center of the Web, is a legendary rare elf detective 5/4 with menace for 4, a black and a green. Whenever Izani, Center of the Web, enters the battlefield or attacks, they collect evidence 4. If you do, create 2/1 black and green spider creature tokens with menace and reach. Sacrifice 4 tokens, surveil 2, then draw 2 cards, you gain 2 life. Alright, so there's a Golgari tokens deck. Collect the evidence. If you do, create 2/1 black and green spider creature tokens with menace and reach. Okay. So those would be able to tap for colors along with your plants. And then there was one that cared about tokens having different names. And then you could sacrifice all of those tokens to surveil 2 and draw 2 cards and gain 2 life. I mean, okay, so 5/4 menace for 6 is alright. It's okay. And then evidence 4 being able to create 2/1 black creature tokens with menace. This is kind of like Lulth vibes. This could get out of hand, right? So, Team Ho, what's evidence? I'll be covering. I'll be doing a set review that goes over what everything is. Evidence is a clue. Sorry, no. Investigate is a clue. Evidence is so. Evidence 4 is mana value 4 from your graveyard. So anything is evidence. It's just it looks at the mana value. So you gotta exile some. You gotta exile cards that equal 4 mana value to trigger this. Yeah. So this kind of gives me that Lolth vibe, and like you do get to create these 2/1 spider tokens that have synergy with Golgari wanting tokens, and then Menace and Reach is, kind of classic spider theme. So yeah, I like what this card is doing. Is this a card that you'd be worth splashing? Potentially, right? Because it is 6 cost. There is kind of like in Sultai, do you want to be doing the collect evidence 4 to get rid of stuff? Jeskai, if you okay, so hear me out for a second. Jeskai, black, green, white would be really good at creating tokens because we saw multiple cards in white that will create detective tokens. So Abzan tokens, that could definitely be a thing. 4 or more. Flubob, good point. It doesn't have to be exact. You can do 4 or more for the mana value of evidence. I don't usually splash, but I'm thinking it's intriguing. This could be, if this was a little bit more powerful, it would be an A. I'm going to give it a B. And I do think that you're going to be able to splash these gold cards, but I thought that about Phyrexia All Will Be One, and I was way off. I was way wrong. So I guess I wasn't that off, but like I was like the Gruul gold card goes into every deck, and it sort of ended up like that. Judith Carnage Connoisseur is a rare legendary human shaman for 3, a black and a red. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, choose one. That spell gains Death Touch and Lifelink, or create a 2/2 red imp creature token with, when this creature dies, it deals 2 damage to each opponent. Okay, so like your shock gaining Death Touch and Lifelink, that's kind of cool. And then, or a shock creating a 2/2 red imp that when it dies, it deals 2 damage to each opponent is also cool. All right. And Grixis. Okay, so you could do like blue-red. You could do blue-red spells where you're splashing black for this to give all of your spells Death Touch and Lifelink. I have no idea how the lands are in this set. We're about to get there. Haven't covered them yet. 3, 4 for 5s. Okay. Yeah. Is it worth an A? I don't think so. But giving every one of your instances and spells creating a 2/2 red imp token is kind of interesting. And Death Touch and Lifelink is nothing to scoff at, right? Like turning your shock into miniature lightning helix. Kind of cool. Yeah, I'll give it a B. I'm definitely intrigued by that. It might be better than a B. All right, Kaya, Spirit's Justice. We get ourselves our Planeswalker. I'm really glad they've decided to do like one Planeswalker a set instead of a whole bunch. Whenever one or more creatures you control and or creature cards in your graveyard are put into exile, you may choose a creature card from among them. Until end of turn, target token you control becomes a copy of it, except it has flying. Wait, so more token stuff. Okay, and that fits with the what I was thinking of, like Golgari plus white. So like Abzan tokens. Okay. Surveil 2, then exile a card from a graveyard. Whenever one or more creatures you control and or creature cards in your graveyard. So if you exile a creature card in your graveyard, you can make a token into a copy of that, and you get to Surveil 2. And then you've also got create a 1/1 white and black spirit creature token with flying, which you can make into the busted thing that you find. And then for -2, you can exile target creature that you control. For each other player, exile up to 1 target creature that player controls. Okay, so you can like exile things, but you also have to exile one of your things, but then your token becomes the copy of whatever you exiled. Wow. Okay. Yeah, no, that's good. Typically planeswalkers that create a blocker of their own, as long as you can uptick and create a blocker, it tends to be pretty damn spicy. And there's a lot to unpack in here. Yeah. So you create a 1/1 white back creature token with flying. You then exile your opponent's thing and then make your token into whatever was your thing if you want to exile your best card. Otherwise, you surveil and you try to dig into something to turn your white spirit creature token into something beastie. Yeah, it's interesting. I like it. I'm going to give it a B. I think that planeswalkers that tend to create their own blockers tend to be an A. But at least this one is like, multiple colors. So I'll give it a B. Everything gets a B. And then Kellen, Inquisitive Prodigy, is a legendary human fairy detective, 3/4 for 2, a green and a blue. And it comes with an adventure, which we haven't really seen on any other cards yet. Tail the Suspect is a green and a blue to investigate, and you may play an additional land this turn. I don't really care for the playing an additional land each turn. It's not as much ramp as you might think, is like you play the land and then eventually run out of lands in your hand, and then it's not really ramp, right? Compared to finding it and putting it onto the battlefield. But then you get a 3/4 flying vigilance. Whenever Kellen Inquisitive Prodigy attacks, destroy up to 1 target artifact. If you controlled that permanent, draw a card. Well, we've got some good enchantment. Okay, so like It destroys artifacts, not enchantments, but you can destroy your opponent's clue tokens, and then if you destroy your own, you don't have to pay the 2 to trigger the card draw. All right. That seems acceptable. I'm not sure that's a power level that you're going to want to splash for, though, right? Especially because then you lose out on the adventure. I think this one's just going in Simic. But being able to draw for free off of all of your clue tokens once a turn is interesting enough to me. And like a 3/4 flying vigilance for 4 is decently statted. So I'll give it a B. Lots of B's for the gold cards. Brawl Whip Cracker. Get ourselves a uncommon insect assassin for a black and a green. You get a 3/2 reach. And Crawl Whip Cracker enters the battlefield, destroy target token and opponent controls. So interesting that we've seen whenever an artifact is destroyed, deals 2 damage with the Grizzly Bear at uncommon and red. And now we're also seeing token specific hate. So there's kind of like there are some cards that are specifically good against other archetypes. Yeah, so whatever ends up being the token archetype, this one is better at. And then the 3/2 reach trades with a lot of the stuff that's in the air. It's not like I wish this was a 3/3 reach because I feel like the 2 toughness is a problem. But if you can play this and destroy a useful token, then that's okay. Yeah, I mean, it is a 2-drop for Golgari. Doesn't really give me an idea of what Golgari is trying to do, though. So I don't know if this is a really good signpost uncommon. Emo, you're saying 3/3 for 2 seems too good with reach? Yeah, I mean, without Defender, you're probably right. We saw a 3/3 at common in Neon Dynasty, right? And that turned out to be a pretty powerful card. So you're right, it's probably too powerful as a 3/3. But yeah, I'll give this a B. I think that's a generous B, though. And then we've got Kylox, Visionary Inventor, Legendary, Rare, Yashino, Artificer, a 4/4 Menace Ward 2 Haste for 5, a blue and a red. 7-drop. When Kylox, Visionary Inventor attacks, sacrifice any number of other creatures, then exile the top X cards of your library, where X is their total power. You may cast any number of instant and or sorcery spells from among the exiled cards without paying their mana cost. Porky, what's wrong with a 3/2 with 2 usable abilities? Yeah, I mean, it's not bad. I mean, it's just, it's a difficult casting cost to have 1 black and 1 green. Well, that's not just like easily cast on 2. So it's okay. Hylox, Visionary Inventor, though, Menace Ward 2 Haste for 7-drop. I think this is too expensive. You sacrifice something of yours that you're then digging to, like if you know that you're going to hit something useful, then it's great. But without knowing that you have like an instant or sorcery that just makes you win the game, I don't want to lose those cards permanently for that kind of like one-of effect. Yeah, I'm gonna go with this is not a rare that I'm excited for. Yeah, I'm gonna give this one a D. I think I'm gonna save this one for constructed shenanigans and fun casual commander shenanigans at that. Or build around. Hylox's Volt Strider is a mythic artifact vehicle for 1, a blue and a red. You get a 4/4. And collect evidence 6. Volt Strider becomes an artifact creature until end of turn. Wow, until end of turn? I wish that was just permanent. Okay. Whenever Kylox Volt Strider attacks, you may cast an instant or sorcery spell from among cards exiled with it. If that spell would be put into a graveyard, put it on the bottom of its owner's library instead, and then it has crew too. So I should have just continued to read the card. Okay, so if you collect evidence, cast the instant or sorcery from the cards that were exiled, and if that spell would be put into a graveyard, it's put on the bottom, so you get to recast it. All right, this is more what I think Blue-Red's trying to do. This is more like, you get to replay your blue and red cards that help you draw. This card's great, yeah. And then like Crew 2's okay. The only downside is that like it's strictly for blue-red decks. You're not really splashing this card. But it does what the blue-red deck is wanting. This is what I was thinking it was doing, which is playing spells and collecting evidence. So the other 2 blue-red feel a little bit off to me. as far as like signpost of what the archetype's actually trying to do. 'Cause I think the artifact sacrifices more into what Dimir is trying to do with black, but this feels right on point. I like this. I'll give this one a B. Lazav, Wearer of Faces, is a blue-black legendary shapeshifter detective. 2/3. Whenever Lazav, Wearer of Faces attacks, exile target card from a graveyard, then investigate. And whenever you sacrifice a clue, you may have Lazav become a copy of a creature card exiled with it until end of turn. So, graveyard hate, I like that. Works for the Golgari, removing cards from your own graveyard if you want to shoot your own thing. You investigate, which you then can pop. Sacrifice it to draw a card to turn it into whatever you just did. And investigating every single turn is decent enough. Pairs nicely against the Ward 2 creatures. You know, the 3-cost 2/2 Ward 2 creatures that are disguised. I like this a lot. I think you can cheese this into some really crazy stuff. Yeah, this one's great too. I'll give this one a B. Leyline of the Guild Pack. You got green-white split, green-blue split, black-green split, and red-green split. So green split mana times 4. If Leyline of the Guild Pack is in your opening hand, you may begin the game with it on the battlefield. Each non-land permanent you control is all colors. And lands you control are every basic land type in addition to their other types. Alright, speaking of multicolored shenanigans, meme. This is a meme. It turns everything into rainbow, which is cool because there are stuff that like pay off for it. But this is the multicolored meme card in the set. Not really my cup of tea. It does make your lands tap for rainbow as well. But like a 4-mana enchantment that doesn't do anything other than enable you to play with all the colors, it's not my thing. I'm giving this an F. Someone's gonna do something with it, but it's not me. Lightning Helix, hey! Okay, Lightning Helix. Oh, goody, they're bringing back Lightning Helix. I'm tempted to give this an A. Because, like, I loved Lightning Helix so much back in the early 2000s, right? This card's just dumb. Instant speed. Instant speed, deal 3 damage, gain 3 life. I'm down. Alright, I'm giving it a B. It doesn't go into every deck. But, like, Lightning Helix is my bae. And you can hit any target. You can shoot face. It's amazing. Meddling Youths is let's see here, an uncommon human detective for 3, a red and a white. Get a 4/5 haste. When you attack with 3 or more creatures, investigate. Okay, so Boros is go wide, attack with 3 or more creatures. Gotcha. 4/5 haste for 5. That can trigger blue tokens. Sure. I'll give it a B. You could even splash this card. Possibly. I'm not sure you want to, but you could. Alright, Niv Mizzet, Guild Pact. You got Wooburg for a 6/6 legendary dragon flying hexproof from Multicolored. Whenever Niv Mizzet Guild Pact deals combat damage to a player, it deals X damage to any target. Target player draws X cards, and you gain X life, where X is the number of different color pairs among permanents you control that are exactly 2 colors. Wait, so if you have the Guild Pact, doesn't that make them all colors, and so they're not exactly 2? Is this even, like, it's the Guild Pact card, does it work with the leyline of the Guild Pact? If everything is all colors, then they're not exactly 2 colors. So it's kind of weird that there's a non-synergy there. Different color pairs among permanents you control that are exactly 2 colors, yeah. So otherwise this would deal 10 damage to a target, draw 10 cards, gain 10 life. But yeah, this is the Wooburg, this is the meme, this is the Wooburg meme of the set. I look forward to Nummy's video where they make this into an amazing card and or make it you know, make it work. Again, not what I'm interested in doing, but more playable, I think, than the Leyline. So I'll give this one a D. If you want to do it, go for it. Do the meme. Brace the meme. No More Lies is a uncommon instant for a white and a blue that counters target spell unless its controller pays 3. If that spell is countered this way, exile it instead of putting it into its owner's graveyard so they can't use it to collect evidence. All right. Love it. All right, mana link. Mana leak. Well, it's been a long day. Yeah, I'll ship it. I'll give this one a B. Officious Interrogation. A rare instant for white and a blue. This spell costs a white and a blue more to cast for each target beyond the first, so you can storm it, in a sense. Choose any number of target players. Investigate X times, where X is the total number of creatures those players control. Wow. Clue tokens. Okay. That feels like it's going to give you a fair amount of clue tokens. And you can, like, if you have multiple, you can really, like, that's a lot of late game draw. Sure. I'll bite. I'll give it a B. Porky saying this is a bad stroke. Oh, you're saying this one is a bad stroke. Because it depends on what stroke you're talking about. Stroke of genius? Yeah, stroke of genius. Okay, yeah. I don't know. There's enough investigation token synergies in the deck that, like, and in the archetype that I think that this will be okay. If you're up against the blue-red spell deck, then it's going to be awkward because they have no creatures, right? So it kind of depends on what you're up against. Private Eye is a uncommon Innocuous Detective for a white and a blue. You get a 3/3. Other detectives you control get +1/+1. It's on point because Azorius is doing the detectives thing. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, target detective can't be blocked this turn. Sure, this is great. Because, you know, detectives come with clues, and the clues help you draw 2. And then we've also seen there's the 3/2 blue that that triggers a loot every time that it or a detective comes into play. So the detectives are already good at drawing 2 outside of the clue token synergies. So then making them be unblockable, this is great. I'll give this a B. Stab Amonte. You target yourself and opponent and cash in on a locked board for the interrogation. You can also target your opponent multiple times, right? There's nothing in the rules that, like, you can't just target your opponent several times, so you don't need to target yourself. So you would probably choose you or your opponent depending on who had the more amount of creatures, I think. All right, we got Rakdos, Patron of Chaos. Nice. We get a legendary demon, 6/6 flying trample for 4, a black and a red. At the beginning of your instep, target opponent may sacrifice 2 non-land, non-token creatures. If they don't, you draw 2 cards. Okay, so unless they have instant speed removal, this is immediately making your opponent do 2 sacrifices, or you draw 2 cards for a 6/6 trampler for 6. S. Yeah. They can't even be clue tokens. They have non-land, non-token permanents. And you get the card draw. It's a win-win either way. Yeah. This is the first S I've given out. I'm giving this one an S. I think that, like, it doesn't have a double pip. You can play this in any red deck, in any black deck. You know, this is worth splashing. It doesn't have haste the turn it comes down, but, like, I think it's doing enough. Maybe S is too high. But, like, I think this one has been a tier above a lot of the other stuff. And so, like, I've got to eventually give out an S. And so, like, Rakdos, Patron of Chaos, I can see why you're the most expensive card in the set. You're busted. All right, Rakish Scoundrel. We've got a elf rogue common. Common elf rogue for 2, a black and a green. So we get a 3/3 Death Toucher. When Rakish Scoundrel enters the battlefield or is turned face up, target creature gains indestructible until end of turn. And it has a disguise of 6. Aha, this is the one that Merc was talking about. This is how you can make your red 8/4 indestructible. Blue Bob, you're attacking my pronunciation? Is that what's going on? Rakdos? No. Why would it be Rakdos? That's wrong. There's no umlaut or any reason to make that into an A over an ah. It's definitely Rakdos. Oh, rakish instead of rockish. Okay, this one I can agree with. Rakish Scoundrel. Did I say rockish? Okay, whatever. You get a 3/3 Death Toucher that has Disguise 6, very expensive Disguise, but if you do you could actually do this with the red. So you could expose the culprit or whatever, the expose card in red, flip this, giving your 8/4 indestructible. So there's a 9 mana combo where you could activate and destroy your entire opponent's board with the Gruul 8/4 and this and one other card. 3-card combo, amazing. All right, oh yeah, indestructible is cool. It can give itself indestructible too. So you're like surprise. I think this works better if you can cheaply flip it though. So I'm gonna give it a B. Yeah, Flubob. It's not that bad, but like it's also, you know, I'm gonna mispronounce things. It's okay. So now you're just gonna be in the collection of time for all eternity on YouTube as telling me I've said the thing wrong, which is okay. You know, it's okay. I just read what's on the teleprompter. Exactly. Relive the past. We've got ourselves a rare sorcery for 5, a green and a white. Return up to 1 target artifact card, up to 1 target land card, and up to 1 target non-aura enchantment card from your graveyard to the battlefield. They are 5/5 elemental creatures in addition to their other types. So you get 3 5/5s for 7, as long as you can hit an artifact, an enchantment, and a land in your graveyard. Which green has some self-mill. White wasn't particularly good at the self-mill, but call me intrigued. And also, white has some really good enchantments. We have some really good case cards. So, yeah, sure. I'll give this one a B. I think that you could even splash it, right? I mean, it's possible that you're going to put this into one of your multicolored decks as a payoff for doing a bunch of stuff with your graveyard. Repulsive Mutation is a uncommon instant for X, a green and a blue. Put X +1/+1 counters on target creature you control, then counter up to 1 target spell unless its controller pays mana equal to the greatest power among creatures you control. Yeah, it's kind of fun. I'm not sure it's good, but like it's kind of fun. You get a +1, so you get +X, and then counter spell unless they pay X, where X is whatever thing that you made bigger. If they then kill your thing, then that's kind of awkward, but it's still like it could be a 2 mana counter just based off of the power that you have. And like Simic tends to have like big green beef. So this could be a 2 mana counter. Yeah, I'll give that a B. Rift Burst Hellion is a common Hellion. 6/7 with reach for 5, a red and a green. And it has Disguise with 4 split mana, or double pip split mana between red and green. So I think a couple of things. So red-green feels like it's kind of the Disguise creature archetype. And just because the only way to cheaply enable the Disguise was in red. And so I'm looking in that direction, right? And then like a 6/7 reach though, this is pretty big. This is a big boy. So what intrigues me about this is another card, right? So you play this down disguised as a 2/2 ward 2, and then you at instant speed make it into a 6/7 reach for 1 and a red. Also, like, you know, it's hard to say how late the game is going to go. And if this is like a really go big format, it's possible the game's going to be kind of slow and you're going to be okay with, you know, there's a lot of cards in the set that disguise for around 6 mana that deal 6 damage, and this is one of those cards. Is it amazing? No. I'll give this one a C. All right, Runebrand Juggler is a uncommon human shaman for a black and a red. When it enters the battlefield, suspect up to 1 target creature you control, and then you can, for mana sink of 3 colorless, a black and a red, sacrifice a suspected creature. Target creature gets -5/-5 until end of turn. Bit expensive. Bit expensive. You would have to pay 7 if you wanted to get rid of a disguised creature. But you either play it just as a 2/2 menace for 2, or you can suspect a different creature of yours. It has to be something you control. But the archetype is doing the suspect thing. That's what Rakdos is about. And then you can sacrifice a 1/1 suspected creature to give something -5/5. You know, it does something. It's not amazing. I'll give it a B. And then we've got Sanguine Savior, which is a common vampire cleric 2/1 flying lifelink for 1, a white, and a black. And it has Disguise for double pip split white-black mana. And when Sanguine Savior is turned face up, another target creature you control gains lifelink until end of turn. Hell yeah! Let's go. All right, we saw one other flying lifelinker in white. So racing in the air and lifelink is beautiful. You know, we saw that with Ruin Lurker Bat. So I like that. I like that sort of effect. And yeah, flying lifelink is a hell of a pairing. I'll give that one a B. Shady Informant is a common ogre rogue, 4/2 for 3, a black, and a red. When Shady Informant dies, it deals 2 damage to any target, and it has Disguise for 2, and then double pip black-red split mana. So, that's less fun, I think, you know, because like it doesn't. See, for 4, you're switching into 4/2. For 5, you'd be hitting for 6. When it dies, it deals 2 damage to a target. That doesn't happen unless it's flipped, right? Hey, what's up, Isaiah? Holy crap, the flavor text? Yeah. Rakdos snitches rarely survive to get stitches. They just dead. Well, I'm not particularly impressed with this card. Certainly not as a 4/2 for 5. So then the disguise part of it is what is appealing about this card, and I'm not particularly appealed by its disguise. So, and the shock is not necessarily good because if it dies and hits something with ward 2, it's not great. I'm gonna give this one a D. I think I'm gonna pass on the Rakdos common. Soul Search, we've got an uncommon sorcery for a white and a black. Target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a non-land card from it. Exile that card. If the card's mana value is 1 or less, create a 1/1 white and black spirit creature token with flying. I don't like that. I'm gonna give that one a D. I don't usually like that sort of choose a non-land, make them discard it kind of effect, unless there's a go small strategy. And I don't think there is a go small strategy so far. I could be wrong, but nothing has really stood out, right? We do have discard in black, and we do have discard. We have a Mind Rot in there as well as the 1/1 creature that makes you discard. The issue is that there's a fair amount of cheap card draw, right? So I'm not sure that discarding my opponent's hand is really that great. Yeah, and Isaiah brings up a good point here. It's a good sideboard card in best of 3 if you are playing against an opponent who has a bomb that you have no answer to. So it can be like oh, I need help. Sumala Sentry is a uncommon elf archer, 1/3 reach for green and a white. Whenever a face-down permanent you control is turned face up, put a +1/+1 counter on it and a +1/+1 counter on Sumala Sentry. Okay, so this is kind of giving me an idea of what Naya's trying to do. So, seeing kind of a theme of face-down permanents in red-green, and so you could be playing this with that, you know, kind of play into the red space to tap in a little bit more of the face-down permanents. We saw some detectives in white that were disguised creatures. I'm gonna have to go back and count how many disguised creatures we have in green, but that seemed like a decent space too. It doesn't feel really on point with what Celestia is trying to do. I thought Celestia was trying to go wide, but maybe the go wide is red-white. I don't know. We're gonna have to go back. I'm gonna have to count that one. This one's gonna require me to do some further research. For the time being, I'm gonna give it a B, and then go down on it if it feels like it's kind of off. But a 1/3 reach, if you can make this just even into a 2/4 reach, I think it's gonna pair pretty well. So we also had a green 1/3 reach that you could collect evidence to make into a 2/4 reach. And so I think as long as you can like do this once, it's going to be a card that you're happy about. Pesa, Opulent Oligarch, is a rare legendary human advisor for 1, a white, and a black. Gives you a 2/3 death touch. At the beginning of your instep, investigate for each opponent who lost life this turn. And then whenever a clue you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, create a 1/1 white and black spirit creature token with flying. This ability triggers only once each turn. Okay. So what is white doing? What is white black? What is the white black archetype? We've seen some lifelink, seen some token synergies that we talked a little bit about the Abzan space and white, black, and green being decent with tokens. There's some clue synergies which could go for like Esper. Okay, so Esper like blue black sacrifice clues. I don't know. I'm not getting a really like heavy two color. This is what this archetype is doing from Orsov. It's a little bit more muddled, at least for the time being. But do I care about a 2/3 Death Touch that turns my clue tokens into 1/1 flyers? Yeah. Give this one a B. 10 Street Gossip. 10 Street Gossip is a 4/4 uncommon Viashino Visor with Vigilance for 2, a red and a green, and it can tap to add red and green. Spend this mana only to cast face down spells or to turn creatures face up. All right, well this sells me on the feeling I was already getting that red green is about skies. 4/4 vigilance that can make your disguise, like you get to attack with this and then also use it to cast disguise at instant speed. I love it. I love it. Yeah, I'll give it a B, especially because like it fits the archetype's theme. I think that like it's pretty straightforward. Thank you, Flubomb, for linking that. Like that was the flavor text wins. The law mages are trying to hush it up, but I'm telling you, the guard didn't fall off that balcony. He was pushed. Nice. Yeah. Thanks for that. Good catch there, Sharp Set. All right. Tolsimir, Midnight's Light. Oh, did I get... Yeah, give this a B. Tolsimir, Midnight's Light is a rare legendary elf scout, 3/2 lifelink for 2, a green and double pip white. When Tolsimir, Midnight's Light enters the battlefield, create Boja Finstalker, a legendary 5/5 green and white wolf creature token with trample. Whenever a wolf you control attacks, if Tolsimir attacked this combat, target creature an opponent controls blocks that wolf this combat if able. Okay. Difficult to cast mana, but you get a 3/2 lifelinker and a 5/5. 5/5's permanent too. 5/5 trampler just comes along, right? Even if Tolsimir dies. And then if the wolf attacks, if you also attack with Tolsimir, then target creature has to block the wolf. You get 2 cards in 1. You get an 8/7 worth of stats over 2 bodies for 5 mana. All right, I'm giving you a B just because of the double pip white. The wolf gets sad if Tolsimir dies, yeah. But Tolsimir doesn't go away, which is the important part. That's a lot of stats in one. If you're base white, I think you splash green for this. Seems pretty good. All right, then we've got Treacherous Greed, which is as an additional cost to cast this spell. Treacherous Greed is a rare instant for 1 white, a colorless, a white, and a black. It's starting to get a little late. As an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice a creature that dealt damage this turn. Draw 3 cards. Each opponent loses 3 life, and you gain 3 life. Okay, so there's loosely a opponent lost life kind of thing going on in Orsov. That's pretty good. Sacrifice one of your bat tokens that dealt damage, and then you get to draw 3 cards, and your opponent loses 3 life, and you gain 3 life. Yeah, I'll give that a B. Seems to be doing what Orsov wants to be doing. Trostani, 3 Whispers. Timo, instant speed. Yeah. Instant speed. Trostani, 3 Whispers, which is, yeah, if your opponent decides to try to remove something after it dealt damage, though, they're usually going to do it before it deals damage. So the instant speed's a little bit less important, but still, if your opponent goes to remove something that dealt damage and then you end up sacking it to draw 3 cards and they lose 3 life, that's a pretty good got 'em moment for sure. Trostani, 3 Whispers, is a mythic legendary Dryad, 4/4 for a green white split mana, and a white. So this one's a little bit more specific to Celestia. And you've got 3 abilities. 1 in a green, target creature gains Death Touch until end of turn. Really great for those 1/1 tokens. You got green and white split mana, target creature gains Vigilance until end of turn. And then you've got 2 and a white, target creature gains Double Strike until end of turn. Holy cow. Notably all at instant speed. Instant speed Death Touch. Instant speed Double Strike. Tap 5, give something Double Strike and Death Touch. Yeah, Double Strike plus Death Touch seems kind of good. Yeah, alright, well, giving this one a B just because it is very restricted mana. You're looking at double pip white and a green or double pip green and a white. This is, you know, if this was a little easier to cast, a little bit more flexible in its mana cost, it would be an easy A. But this is a Celestia Superstar. It's definitely going to be an A in Celestia, but it's a little restricted to the Celestia space. Undercover Crocodile? Alright, we got a common Elf Crocodile Detective. 5/5 for 4, a green and a blue. Whenever Undercover Crocodile deals combat damage to a player, investigate. Alright, and then Disguise 3, and then double pip green-blue split mana. Yeah, I'll give this one a C. It's doing what all the other disguised cards are doing. And, you know, dealing damage to a player to get a free token is not nothing. Yeah, don't try to think about too much what happened between the elf and the crocodile here. That one got Skelly. Just walking by. All right. Urgent necropsy? Necropsy. I'm having a day. I'm having a day. All right, we're almost through it. So we've got ourselves here a mythic instant for 2, a black and a green. As an additional cost to cast the spell, collect evidence X, where X is the total mana value of the permanents the spell targets. You can destroy up to 1 target artifact, up to 1 target creature, up to 1 target enchantment, and up to 1 target planeswalker. Ah, the Golgari destroy everything. That's pretty great. I like that. So 4 costs, but you have to like collect evidence pretty highly. But this is like our one little bit of targeted destroy enchantment, destroy artifact. Yeah, I'm gonna go with B on this one. I think this is good. I don't think I'm gonna splash for it. But if you're in the Sultai space where you're like doing stuff with your graveyard, collecting that evidence, this is pretty good removal, and I think there's enough interesting artifacts and enchantments that you're gonna want to do all 3. But obviously, it's gonna matter like what's going on. But seems like decent removal. Thanafar, Evolved Enigma, is a mythic legendary elf ooze wizard. The elves are getting a little experimental on this plane. So we've got 2, a green and a blue, for a 3/4. At the beginning of combat on your turn, choose 1, cloak a card from your hand, or put a +1/+1 counter on each colorless creature you control. Okay, so I was kind of thinking Simic was going to be the disguise place, but maybe it's Temur. Maybe Temur is the like really great space for disguise. Because being able to put a +1/+1 counter at the beginning of combat on each disguised creature you control is pretty awesome. And then like you also get to like, so when it comes into play, it's a 3/4 worth of stats that immediately, as long as it doesn't get like instant speed removal, creates a 2/2 ward 2 with the like worst card in your hand. And you can cloak a card that's not a creature. You just can't turn it face up. Yeah, so I'm thinking this is gonna be good. I like this. This is B. I'm open to splashing, especially in the green space, because green makes splashing relatively free, right? So I could see myself doing like a Temur disguise deck. I just don't splash very often. War Leader's Call. We've got ourselves a rare enchantment for 1, a red and a white. Creatures you control get +1/+1. Right, so we got our Anthem. And whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, War Leader's Call deals 1 damage to each opponent. Hell yeah. Let's freaking go. That's exactly what an archetype that wants to be attacking with 3 or more creatures wants to see. Whenever your creature enters the battlefield, whenever you're creating those tokens by going wide, you're pinging for 1/1 or for 1 damage, and then your 1/1 tokens become 2/2s. I'd give this an A if it, I'm gonna give this a B because it goes in Boros, right? Don't think you're gonna splash it because it's a lot better on turn 3 than it is on turn 5. Give it a B. But hell yeah, Boros fist pump. Let's go. I'm also a dirty aggro player. Wisp Drinker Vampire is a uncommon vampire rogue, 2/4 flyer for 2, a white and a black. So I guess Orsov is flying and life stuff. Whenever another creature with power 2 or less enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Okay. Creatures you control with power 2 or less gain Death Touch and Lifelink until end of turn. Okay, so it's like Orsov is kind of like the attrition-y sap, and then you've got tokens that are 2 or less power. All right, I can dig it. I'll give it a B. Seems to be doing what the Orsov theme wants to try to do. And then Lead is asking a question here. Evidence is interesting. You can feel it a lot easier than it seems. Land cyclers help a ton too. Just immediately get 6. There's 1 land cycler. And works like Delve? Yeah. Collect evidence works like Delve. But it depends on the converted mana cost of the card. Whereas I think Delve was Delve just the number of cards? The star wants you to explain collect evidence. Okay, I'm doing that right now, right? 1 mana cheaper for each card removed. Yeah, this one is just strictly like this would be this. You could use this to collect evidence for 4, right? So it's not 1 per card. This would be worth doing for 4, and it's just converted mana cost. It doesn't matter if it's a permanent or if it's a spell, which is why I think the blue-red archetype, you're going to collect evidence off of the spells that you're using that cycle to draw into more spells, as opposed to self-mill. There's not a whole lot of self-mill. There's a little tiny bit of it in green, but most of it's going to be looting from blue, and then, yeah, cycling spells in blue-red. So I hope that answers your question. We'll keep on keeping on here. World Soul's Rage is a rare sorcery for X, a red and a green. World Soul's Rage deals X damage to any target. Put up to X land cards from your hand and or library onto the battlefield tapped. All right, so this may be an unpopular opinion. No problem, Histar, or High Star. Oh, you got the Leet Speak too. Hell yeah. I don't like this card. So you're dealing X damage to a target. If the target has ward, you're already looking to, pay 4 just to start dealing X damage. And then the red-green space didn't seem like a spot that was really trying to ramp into like filling your graveyard. I'm going to leave this more for constructed play. I'm going to give this one an F. I'm going to give it an F. I almost gave it a D, but I just really don't think I'm going to want to be doing this at all in limited. It can go face, that's true. It can deal X damage to target's face. But Ablaze it is not, right? Yeah, I'm not a big fan of Fireball, Isaiah. Yeah, I feel this is a constructed deck. You could ramp to really big stuff and then like deal damage to your opponent. Just not really what I want to do in limited. Yaris Roar of the Old Gods is a rare legendary centaur druid, 4/4 for 2, a red and a green. Other creatures you control have haste. Whenever 1 or more face-down creatures you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. And whenever a face-down creature you control dies, return it to the battlefield face down under its owner's control if it's a permanent card, then turn it face up. What? So your disguised creature dies. Instead of it going to the graveyard, it comes back to the battlefield face up. That's great. And then one of your face-down creatures deals combat damage to a player, you draw a card. And your disguised creatures that you're playing have haste. Sure. Yeah, so especially in the red-green and potentially red-green-blue archetype space, I think this is amazing. I think there's enough disguise in other colors as well that you maybe want to splash for this. I'm going to give this an A. Curiosity on face-down creatures. and then the fact that they come back face up is really a great payoff for the disguise mechanic. Return it to the battle face down under its owner's control. If it's a permanent card, then turn it face up. So you're right, it returns face down, but then gets turned face up. The reason why they wrote it like that is because if you have like a cloaked land, if a cloaked land dies, you return it to the battle face down, which it doesn't have, right? Turn it to the battlefield face down. So there's no face down for a, and then if it's a permanent, then turn it face up. So I think this works for disguise. I don't think it works for cloaked. I'm gonna have to look into the ruling for this. And it also triggers the flip effect, yeah, because the creature starts face down and then gets turned face up. So if it's a cloaked land, you get a land. Yeah. Even though it says return face down, if it doesn't have a face down, it's okay. Yeah, and if it's a cloaked spell, you get nothing. Yeah, I'm going to give this one an A. I'm going to give this one an A. It's not difficult to splash. It's no double pips. It's 4 CMC or more. Anytime that you're in red or green, I think this is something that you're going to be interested in playing. The fact that it gives all of your creatures haste and then like just makes your disguised and your cloaked creatures just fantastic. So I'll look up the ruling on that one. As far as like what happens if a cloaked land, I think the cloaked land comes into play. That's what I would think, but I don't know. I trust Isaiah though. Okay, so now we're into split cards. Cease and Desist is a Abzan space, so black, green, and white. We've got 1 and a black-green split mana for an instant. Exile up to 2 target cards from a single graveyard. Target player gains 2 life and draws a card. Yeah, well, get rid of that collect evidence. I think that's useful. And then Desist is a 4 double pip green-white split mana, destroy all artifacts and enchantments. That one's a little less interesting. I like this one more for Cease than I do Desist. There might be enough artifacts and enchantments, though, that like you're just able to do that. With split cards, you have to choose one side or the other. You don't get to play both. So usually you're going to be playing this for the Cease. And yeah, gaining 2 life, drawing a card, and exiling 2 cards seems reasonable to me. So I'll give this one a B. Yeah, and in case you play Desist, you know, it's okay. Split cards count for both sides, so it's 8 evidence after Cease. Wait, explain to me. I thought you only chose one or the other. Oh, it counts both sides for collect evidence. Gotcha. Yeah, so when this is in the graveyard, you can collect evidence 8 off of it after you play it for 2. Very interested, very much what Golgari is interested in doing. Gotcha. Yeah, and you can play both sides of it if you play it at the same time, or do you have to choose one side or the other? That one I can't remember off the top of my head. Because like Cease, I know you can play one, and then once you've played one, you can't play the other. It's always choose one. Okay. Wrath of God said you know, yes, you do both. Total cost is 8. Made me think maybe you play both. You can only play one side. Okay, yeah. Okay, I had it right at the beginning. It's making me doubt myself. All right. Next up, we've got Flot Sam, which is 1 and a split mana of green and blue, and then Jet Sam, which is 4 of anything and split mana between 4 of anything and then double pip split mana between blue and black. Flot Sam is mill 3 cards and then investigate, which is okay. We've seen some self mill. There we go. I guess that's not even self mill. Or no, it is. It's not target player. Ooh, it's getting late. Jet Sam, on the other hand, each opponent mills 3 cards. Then you may cast a spell from each opponent's graveyard without paying its mana cost. If a spell cast this way would be put into a graveyard, exile it instead. Well, that was fun for Commander, you know? Because like you get all of your opponents to mill 3, and then you get to cast a spell from each. With 1, you kind of want to see like this on something that you're already going to get value, instead of doing it with the 3, right? But there's enough collect evidence that I think self-mill, I would probably be tempted to play the Flot Sam part of it, right? And as people have pointed out, it gives you collect 8 evidence plus more in your deck, right? So it's a good enabler if you're in that specific archetype. I don't think every archetype is going to want to be self-milling and doing that. So I'm going to give this one a D. If you're in the Sultai space, it's clearly better than a D if you're in Sultai. Yeah, insane evidence enabler, right? Like be in Sultai where you're collecting evidence, and then not that great in like green or in blue, because I don't think green and blue are inherently trying to do the collect evidence outside of the Sultai space, right? Like if you're doing the green white tokens or the green red disguise cards, I don't think you really care about the mill, but could be wrong, right? But I definitely good in the Sultai space. Then we've got our Jeskai payoff here. We've got Fuss and Bother. So Fuss is an instant for 2 and then split red-white mana. Put a +1/+1 counter on each attacking creature you control. For the archetype that wants to be going wide, that's pretty appealing. And then we've got Bother, which is a sorcery 4-cost, white and a blue, double pip, white and blue split mana. Create 3/1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature tokens with flying. Surveil 2. So I was kind of talking about this earlier about how like I felt like some of the is it signposts, the gold uncommons were feeling a little bit off. I think I think they're because they're supposed to be in Jeskai. It's like there's definitely a spell slinger archetype that is like blue red and hard blue red, and I think you could be like blue, blue red white and be doing a kind of an interesting Thopter sacrifice artifact kind of deck. So perfect for that kind of go wide artifact deck in Jeskai. As far as like I'm tempted to just keep this one though for the +1/+1 counter on each attacking creature. The +1/+1 counter, like if it was just +1/+1 until end of turn, that's not been an amazing effect. But being able to permanently pump everything is a little bit more appealing. Question is whether or not things survive. But red has suspect to give things menace, which means it becomes harder for everything to die off and for your opponent to block everything. So I like this more for Fuss than I do for Bother. But it's like, yeah, 6 mana for 3/1/1s, then Surveil 2. But again, you get the collect evidence kind of synergies of this. So Fuss seems good, but it's not a +2/+0 anthem that just ends the game. So I'm gonna go with D on this one again. I think that these are good cards, but they're kind of situational. Whereas, like, I think Cease, I like a little bit more than a D because I could just see Graveyard Hate being really important in this set. So, and the fact that it's card neutral, this like Cease and Desist is higher up on the list than for me than Flot Sam and Plus. But let's tread onward. Got Hustle and Bustle, which is for the teamer. Okay, so yeah, I think that this is kind of confirming what I was talking about. Like we saw hints for these wedges in Abzan tokens, Jeskai Descend, Sultai Descend or Sultai Evidence Collection, Jeskai Artifact Thopters, Teamer Disguised Creatures. Target creature attacks or blocks this turn if able for 1 blue or 1 red. And then we've got Bustle. Creatures you control get +2/+2 and gain trample until end of turn. You may turn a creature you control face up. All right. I like Bustle on this one. That is a game winner. I think everything +2/+2 and trample is overrun. I think that's it. And then the fact that you can flip something face up would be good. For 7, you can make something block. Yeah, Hustle's. I'm not sure if I go as far as to say low key OP, because like you do need to be able to beat the thing that you're trying to block, and they can always multiple block, right? But it does snipe their like really good thing. But like, say you have a 5/5 and they have 2 3/3s. You can make sure one of the 3/3s blocks, but it's still going to create a bad block for you where you're trading a 5/5 for a 3/3. Yeah, you can't cast both. You're right. You're right. So you can't do it for 7. But Bustle's interesting. I like that as a win condition. This one I like more for the Bustle than I do the Hustle. And like, yeah, I'll give that a C. I think that, like giving everything +2/+2 and trample is a win condition. How's your day going, Thunderwunk? We're almost done with this 4-hour long set review, pushing to the end here. And we've got push and pull. So we've got 1 and split white-black mana for sorcery, destroy target tapped creature. 8. And then pull 4 and a double pip split between black and red for the Mardu space. Didn't pick up heavily on what Mardu would be doing. Put up to 2 target creature cards from a single graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. They gain haste until end of turn, sacrifice them at the beginning of the next instep. I like this one more for push. Sorcery, speed, removal, You could hit into pull where it's amazing and you just like slam into them super hard. I'm gonna go with double reanimate for 6 with haste is not bad. I'm gonna give this one a C as well. And then we've finally made it to the artifacts. I'm gonna try to push on through because the set is almost over. We got 20 more cards to go. And my voice hasn't given out completely just yet. But try talking nonstop for 4 hours, right? All right, Cryptex is a colorless artifact, rare for 2. You can tap it to collect evidence for 3 to add 1 mana of any color, put an unlock counter on Cryptex, sacrifice Cryptex, surveil 3, then draw 3 cards, activate only if Cryptex has 5 or more unlock counters on it. Okay. It's a mana rock for 2 that if you've enabled the collect evidence, you can unlock it. And then you have to sacrifice it, surveil 3, then draw 3 cards. Activate only if Cryptex has 5 or more unlock counters on it. Okay, well, it definitely seems good in the Sultai collect evidence space. Helps enable the Sultai collect evidence space, but comes at the price of chewing through your collect evidence in the graveyard, right? And then after you've done it 5 times, you get to draw 3 and refill your graveyard. Yeah, I'm not 100% sold on this. Because to sacrifice it, you'd have to collect evidence 15. And it's only going to be able to do it if you tap it 5 times. Thunderwunk is over here saying that this is low-key an A. I'm going to have to hard disagree. Thunderwunk is saying I think it'll play out better than it looks. I think I have better stuff that I want to do with my evidence than use it to fix mana. Yeah, because eventually you're going to collect evidence on something that costs 5 or 6 or like, because like you have to hit 3 or more, right? And so like if your entire graveyard is made up of 3 drops specifically or 2s and 1s or whatever, right? Like you're still going to have to discard 15 worth of evidence, exile 15 worth of evidence from your graveyard to be able to eventually draw 3 and surveil 3. Oh, you're saying it's worse in a collect evidence deck. I was thinking it was only playable in a collect evidence deck. Dude, I'm not sold on this. All right, you do you, boo, but like I'm gonna give this an F. I don't think I'm gonna play the Cryptex. Sorry. I could be completely wrong. Thunderwunk, you might be 100% right, but you give it an A, I'm gonna go with an F. Yeah, exactly. 3 Omega. There's only so much evidence to go around, so I don't want to do it to fix mana. But it is a 2-cost mana rock. That's decent ramp. Depends on what you're utilizing it for at the 4-cost slot, right? So, Gravestone Strider is a common artifact creature golem 1/3 for 2 colorless. Tap 1 colorless, add 1 mana of any color, activate only once each turn. So we've got a fixer, and then we've got tap 2 colorless, exile Gravestone Strider from your graveyard, exile target card from a graveyard. So a little bit of targeted graveyard hate, I think, is pretty good for hitting the 8 mana value from your opponent's deck. And fixing could be okay. And a 1/3 that blocks your opponent's disguised 2/2 ward 2s. I think there's a lot of things in this, and it's an artifact that has synergies later about artifacts leaving the field or whatnot. So I'm gonna go with giving this a B. That might be too high, but I'm gonna mark it as one of the better, at least colorless commons to come back and review later. Because if it does turn out that this is a 3-color set, this is a good way to enable that. It doesn't even tax you; it just straight up is it fixes once a turn. And when it dies, or if you self-mill it, right? If you mill it into the graveyard, it still does something. And 2 colorless to get rid of a problem in your opponent's graveyard. Attacked that collected evidence. Seems like it could be a decent card. So I think that's going to go into a lot of decks. Maybe B is too high, but I believe in it. I believe in it. Lumbering Laundry, we've got a 4/5 for 5 with a artifact creature golem at uncommon. 2 colorless until end of turn. You may look at face down creatures you don't control anytime. That we saw that in Cons of Tarkir with the Spyglass. You never want to pay mana to look at what your opponent's stuff is, right? I mean, sometimes it comes up and you have the free mana and it's free information. But then you've got Colorless Disguise 5 to flip into a 4/5. Disguise 5 has been dealing, like, the other Disguise 5 cards have been dealing 6 damage, so you're definitely taking a hit to be doing only 4. Yeah, I'm gonna give this one a D. I think, like, you're gonna play it sometimes when you're sad that you didn't get enough Disguise cards when you're in the Temur space, and otherwise you're just gonna pass it. I don't think I'm gonna go out of my way for that one. All right, Magnetic Snuffler is an uncommon artifact construct for 5 colorless. That's a 4/4. Magnetic Snuffler enters the battlefield. Return target equipment card from your graveyard to the battlefield attached to Magnetic Snuffler. Whenever you sacrifice an artifact, put a +1/+1 counter on Magnetic Snuffler. So it pairs well with the clue equipments. I don't want to be playing the clue equipments, but it is a payoff, right? So, like, this would be a reason to play the clue equipment because you could sacrifice it, and then when it enters the battlefield, you get to put 1 clue equipment onto it for free. And then if you sacrifice the clue equipment again, it gets the +1/+1 counter. Nothing amazing here. And if you sacrifice a clue, it gets a +1/+1. Yeah. I mean, if you're leaning heavily into sacrificing a clue every single turn, then this grows into a reasonable threat. Otherwise, I'm not really stoked about it because you have to sacrifice a clue for it to be a 5/5 for 5. So I'm gonna give this one a D. I'm not super stoked about that one, but, like, is it gonna kick my butt one of these days? Yeah. All right, Magnifying Glass, which is what one of the uncommon blue flyers finds when it ETBs, is a 3-cost mana rock. Okay, and then tap 4 Investigate. Never really gonna want to do that. Investigate. That's really expensive. But a free mana rock. Too bad the thing that brought in the Magnifying Glass was a 6-cost blue card. Am I ever playing this in a deck on its own, though? Which you would have to for that card? No. So, sadly, that means this is getting a D, and that means the blue card that I gave that comes in with a top hat and a Magnifying Glass or whatever needs to be brought down. Sanitation, okay, so you could use it for disguise. Maybe this is a good set for the mana rock. I doubt it, though. All right, Sanitation Automaton is a common artifact creature construct, 2/1 for 2. When it enters the battlefield, surveil 1. Sure, I'll give this a C, because it's a way to enable putting stuff into your graveyard and collecting evidence. So more interesting in the Sultai space. Maybe it should be a D for that reason. Like, it only goes in. Yeah. All right. Never mind. I'm going to give it a D. If you're in Sultai, then maybe it's a C. Thinking Cap. This was the one that I was talking about. So equipped creature gets +1/+2. Equipped Detective for 1 colorless. Okay. Then you've got equipped 3. Well, all right. If you're in Azorius, then fine. Go for it. Making your 2/2 detectives into 3/4s is okay. If you're not in Azorius, though, I don't like this at all. So this one is very specific to one archetype in the set. So I'm going to give this one a D. Yeah, okay, but it's not specifically Azorius, right? There are other cards that create detectives that are outside of blue-white, but it's primarily a blue-white card. So, yeah, it's common, right? So, sure. I don't think you even want too many of those, though, if you are in the Azorius deck. You're going to have the opportunity to have, like, 8 of them. Branch of the Vidu Ghazi, which is an uncommon land, taps for colorless, has Disguise 3, colorless, and when it is turn faced up, add 2 mana of any one color. Until end of turn, you don't lose this mana as steps and phases end. That's cool. So you play it out as Disguise 2/2 creature, you hit for the 2 damage, you get 2 of that Disguise mana back, and then kind of for fixing. And then it becomes a colorless land, and the colorless lands tend to hurt you a little bit less after turn 3. Yeah. Can you attack, flip it mid-combat to escape death? Yeah, because it's a land. Yeah, or you could block and flip, and then you could turn it into a land. It removes it from combat, yeah. So, like, it's pretty decent. And it ramps. Yeah, okay, and it ramps. These are all good reasons to put it in your deck. I would put this in as an 18th land, not as a land number 17, because it is colorless. But I think I'm already tempted in running 18 lands in this format. So, yeah. I'd be happy if Branch of Vito Ghazi was my 18th land. Yeah, I like this a lot. I'm gonna give this one a B. Colorless, it fixes, use cool stuff with it. It has disguise synergies. It ramps. Yeah, I like it a lot. I think it's cool. All right. Here we go. Commercial District. Tap land when it enters the battlefield, Surveil. Rare. Wow. Okay, well, Surveil works really well in the set. I'm surprised to see this at rare. I thought they were gonna have like, I thought this was gonna be like common, you know. Still, especially if it's a 3-color set, you're gonna want to pick up the lands, and the Surveil seems to be nice with collecting evidence. So, yeah, this is one of those that, like, it gets a B. All of the rare lands, you know, probably get Bs. Yeah, B. Escape Tunnel. This is Evolving Wilds. I'm gonna give this a C. It is the best Evolving Wilds that we've ever seen, though, because you can tap it to make target creature with power 2 or less can't be blocked this turn. So they decided Terramorphic Expanse in Evolving Wilds needs to be better, which I find surprising. But, you know, it's a tap land that helps you fix, so if you're strictly in a 2-color deck, I don't really like playing Escape Tunnel, so I'm not going to give it a B and say it should go into everything. But, like, if you're doing this, a lot of times Evolving Wilds is how you accomplish playing more than 2 colors. Unless you're Isaiah. That's at least been my experience. All right, and then we've got Hedge Mage, which is rare land gets a B. Lush Portico enters the battlefield tapped, it gets a B, gets a B. Public Thoroughfare enters the battlefield tapped. When it enters the battlefield, sacrifice it unless you tap an untapped artifact or land you control. And then it taps for 1 mana of any color. Public Thoroughfare enters the battlefield tapped. Has to have an artifact or land. And you have to tap it. So, like, if you tap your land, it's like a double tap land, but then it is fixing. D. I'm giving this a D. I think that if you're using this as you're fixing, something went terribly wrong, and you should look at some of the other fixing in the set. Yeah, we'll give this one a B. Scene of the Crime enters the battlefield tapped. It's a colorless land. Tap an untapped creature you control, add 1 mana of any color. Tap 2, sacrifice Scene of the Crime, draw a card. So we've got a clue land. I don't think I desperately need clues that badly to play a colorless land. I don't like this sort of thing. So I'm going to give this one an F. And that one a B. Give that one a B. Give that one a B. Give that one a B. And whoa, we did the whole thing. All right.